I told myself it was content. That was the only reason I sent $500 in Bitcoin to a seller on a dark web market with a snowflake logo and a username that looked like a license plate. I was making a winter-themed unboxing series in my apartment, the kind where you act brave and then laugh it off, and my viewers loved anything labeled mystery box. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning when the street was still quiet and the snow on my front steps was untouched. I noticed the box before I noticed anything else, because it sat perfectly square on my porch, like it had been measured, scented, placed. No delivery slip, no knock, just cardboard and black tape under a dusting of fresh snow. I carried it inside with 2 fingers like it was a dead animal. Up close, the smell hit first. Not garbage, not mildew. Something metallic under the cold paper smelled like pennies warmed in a fist. I set up my camera anyway, because I was stubborn and because I had already paid. The tape did not peel. It tore. It made a sound I can only describe as fabric ripping off skin. Under the flaps there was no packing paper, no bubble wrap, no filler. Just a heavy bundle of winter fabric folded tight, the kind of tight you get when someone rolls something up to hide what it used to be. I unfolded it and immediately understood why the bundle was so dense. It was a parka, thick, expensive looking. The kind of coat that makes winter feel like a suggestion. And right through the front was a hole. It was on the left side of the chest, clean-edged and round, with a ring of dried brown crust around it. I leaned closer, stupidly curious, and the crust caught the light. It was not rust. It was blood that had dried, and then been soaked again, and then dried again. I touched the edge with a fingernail, and the fabric gave a little stiff with something that had seeped into the weave. My mouth filled with a salty taste that I swear was only imagination, until I realized I was breathing through my mouth. I told myself it was fake, prop blood, shock value, the kind of thing people mail to prank channels. I said that out loud, like saying it would make it true. Then I slid my hand into the coat pocket and felt something hard and cold. Not a phone, not a knife, something like a small metal disc. I pulled it out, and it was a spent bullet, flattened at one side with a faint spiral pattern on the jacketed surface. It should not have been clean, but it was. It looked washed. I sat back so fast my chair scraped. My camera kept recording. Somewhere, deep in the coat, something shifted, like there was weight where there should not be. I unzipped the parka with my fingertips. The zipper was gritty, as if it had been dragged through sand. Inside the lining was a light gray that made the stain impossible to ignore. Dried blood had soaked into the inner fabric, in a wide smear, not just around the hole. It looked like someone had pressed their palm there, and then dragged it down, leaving a long dark streak that ended near the hem. My first thought was police. My second thought was that I had just admitted on camera that I bought it from the dark web. I shut off the recording and just stared at the parka on my table like it was staring back. The apartment felt smaller. The radiator clicked. The window rattled with a gust, and for a second I imagined someone outside, watching me through the glass, enjoying my hesitation. I grabbed latex gloves from under my sink, the ones I used for cleaning, and put them on with shaking hands. I went through the coat again slower, this time looking for anything that could convince me it was a stunt. In the inside breast pocket, I found an envelope. No stamp, no seal. Just my name written on it in block letters like a teacher labeling a folder. Inside was a printed photograph. It was my porch, not an old picture pulled from the internet. Yesterday's porch. My current doormat. My shoes on the rack by the door. You could see the exact scratch on the railing where my neighbor's dog jumps. The photo was taken at night with the harsh flash that makes snowflakes look like insects, and in the bottom left corner a pale blur that could have been a hand or a face close to the lens, too close to be accidental. I felt the blood drain from my hands, even through the gloves. I flipped the photo over. There was a sentence written in pen. It fits you. Under that, a time. 2:13. I checked my phone without thinking. The delivery notification timestamp read 2:13 a.m. For a few seconds I could not move. My brain tried to solve it like a puzzle because puzzles are safer than the alternative. The carrier must have scanned it early. A neighbor could have taken a picture. It could be coincidence, but the snow on the porch in the photo was untouched, smooth like frosting. It was not like that anymore. Someone had been there when it was perfect, and they had taken the picture, and then they had left the coat for me to find. I called the police anyway. I left out the part about Bitcoin and markets, and told them I received a package with what looked like evidence of a crime. 2 officers came. They were polite, but the moment they saw the parka, their faces changed into something tired and cautious. One of them asked me if I recognized it. I said no. He asked if I had ordered it. I hesitated for half a heartbeat, and then lied, because I could not imagine saying dark web out loud and being taken seriously. I told him it was a mistaken delivery like that, made more sense than the truth. They bagged the coat, the bullet, the photo. They took my statement. They told me someone would follow up. Then they left, and my apartment was quiet again, except for the echo of their boots on the stairs. That should have been the end. But that night, around 2, I woke up for no reason. No nightmare. No noise. Just my eyes snapping open, like someone had called my name. My phone was face down on the nightstand, and the room was dark enough that I could barely see my own hand. I reached for the phone, and the screen lit with a new notification from my camera app. Motion detected. I did not have indoor cameras. Only a small doorbell camera on the porch, the cheap kind that sends alerts when something crosses the frame. My thumb hovered over the notification, while my heart hammered. I opened it. The clip was 8 seconds long. The porch light was off. The snow was falling sideways in the wind, making the footage grainy and alive. Then a figure stepped into frame. Tall, hood up, no face visible. They did not look at the door. They looked straight into the camera lens, as if they knew exactly where it was, and exactly who would be watching. They held something against their chest, wrapped in plastic. The shape was familiar, a folded winter coat. At the end of the clip, the figure raised one gloved hand and tapped the package twice. Slow, deliberate, like knocking. The next morning there was nothing on my porch. No coat, no box, no footprints. But when I checked my mailbox wedged behind junk mail and a grocery flyer, there was a small padded envelope. No stamp, no postmark, just a label. From you. I did not open the padded envelope right away. I left it on the kitchen counter like it was a venomous spider, and I paced my apartment with my coat on because the air felt colder inside than it did outside. In the light of morning, the label looked even worse, printed in the same clean font a shipping company would use, except the return line said, "From you," as if the person who mailed it wanted me to picture my own hands, sealing it shut. I told myself the police must have dropped it off by mistake. I told myself the courier mixed up addresses. I told myself anything that let me avoid the simpler truth. Someone had been close enough to make this feel personal. When I finally tore the envelope open, a smell rushed out that did not belong in my kitchen. It was like wet wool left in a closed car, mixed with something sweet and chemical like hair dye, like a salon after hours. Inside was a scarf, folded into a tight rectangle. It was heavy for a scarf, dense in a way that made my fingertips tense. The color was an inky black that swallowed the overhead light. The weave looked too glossy for yarn. I pinched one edge and lifted it, and the fabric did not drape the way cloth should. It held shape stubborn, like it remembered being wrapped around something living. I should have put it back. I should have called the officer who took my statement. Instead, I did what I always do when I get scared. I tried to prove myself wrong. I tugged the scarf apart to find the tag, to find a normal explanation, and that is when the hairs caught my skin. They were not loose fibers. They were strands, long, black, and slick, woven through the scarf like thread. When I pulled the scarf, resisted, and then a single strand slid free with a soft, wet sound, like something being drawn out of a drain. It stuck to my glove with static, and then curled toward my wrist as if it wanted warmth. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Human hair has a particular shine. It has weight. It looks alive, even when it is not. This looked alive. I found the tag near the center seam. It was not stitched in. It was trapped inside the weave, laminated like an ID badge, and threaded through with the hair itself. On one side was a number 12 digits, the kind of number you see on official forms. On the other side was a name in small, neat letters. My name. I sat down hard at my table. I looked for ink bleed, for a smudge, for anything that would make it feel like a joke. The letters were perfect. Under my name was my address, formatted exactly the way it appears on my utility bill. My throat went tight, and suddenly I could feel every follicle on my arms. I did not notice I was holding my breath until my chest ached. I did not keep the scarf. I could not. I put it back into the envelope, sealed it with tape, then put that envelope into a trash bag, and then tied the trash bag into a knot, so tight my fingers hurt. I carried it down the hallway to the building dumpster, my heart thudding like I was doing something illegal. The lid was iced over, and I had to slam it twice before it opened. I threw the bag in and watched it land on top of other people's discarded lives, and for the first time all day, I felt a thin slice of relief. It lasted until I got back upstairs. The trash bag was on my doormat. Not the envelope, not the scarf alone. The entire bag tied the way I tied it, sitting upright, like someone had placed it there gently. There were no wet footprints on the hallway tile. The security camera at the end of the corridor was one of those fake dome cameras landlords install to make people behave, but I still found myself looking at it like it could blink. I dragged the bag inside, shaking. I locked the deadbolt. Then I did something I am not proud of. I unfolded the scarf again, because if it could come back, I needed to know what it was trying to say. When I spread it across the table, the pattern in the weave became obvious in a way it had not before. The hair was not random. It was braided and looped to form shapes, small curves and sharp angles the way yarn makes letters in a knit hat. I leaned closer until my breath fogged the surface. The letters were subtle, but once I saw them, I could not unsee them. They spelled a sentence repeated down the length of the scarf, like a curse. Wear it. I felt something tighten behind my ribs. I looked at my arms. The gloves were still on, but hair had found its way onto my sleeves, thin strands clinging to the fabric, as if they had never left. I plucked one off and it stretched. It did not snap the way hair should. It stretched like a filament, then sprang back and stuck again. My phone rang, then loud and abrupt, and I flinched so hard I nearly knocked the scarf to the floor. The caller ID was unknown. I did not answer. The ringing stopped. A second later, a text arrived from a number with no name attached. You look cold. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. I typed back, "Who is this?" No response. Then another message came through, this time with a photo attachment. It was taken from across the street. My building. My lit kitchen window. My silhouette at the table, hunched over a dark strip of fabric. The angle was low, as if the photographer had been sitting in a car. The flash had not fired, but the image was clear enough that I could see the scarf. I could see my hands. I could see my head turned mid-flinch, caught in the exact moment my phone had rung. I dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor. I rushed to the window and yanked the curtain aside. On the street below, half hidden by the falling snow, a figure stood beside a parked car. Hood up, face lost, in shadow. A dark scarf wrapped high around their throat. They lifted one hand and waved slow like a neighbor. Then they reached up and adjusted the scarf, and for one impossible second, I saw its long black strands woven through the fabric, glinting like wet wire. The same pattern, the same braid. I checked the hallway peephole and saw nothing but dim yellow light and blank carpet. I opened the door anyway because fear makes you do dumb math, and I needed to know if someone was still out there. The corridor was empty, quiet, but the air carried a faint smell of wet wool, like someone had just brushed past in a cold coat. I shut the door and slid the chain in place. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the feed from my doorbell camera. The overnight motion clips were still listed, but every thumbnail was the same still frame of my closed door, and every timestamp was exactly 2:13. It was like the camera had watched and chosen to show nothing. My stomach rolled. I stumbled back from the window, and my heel hit something soft. I looked down. A single strand of black hair was curled on my sock like a question mark. Then another, then another. They were coming from the inside of my sleeve, sliding out one by one, as if my own clothes had started growing them. I ran to the bathroom and turned on the faucet full blast. I tried to wash my hands through the gloves. I tried to rinse the hairs away. They clung. They gathered at the drain, and the water began to back up, dark and swirling. A wet bundle surfaced in the sink, like something breathing. I ripped off the gloves and stumbled away, and that is when I saw it in the mirror, a thin black strand hanging from the corner of my mouth, trailing down my chin. I pulled. It did not stop. It kept coming, sliding over my lip, tasting like metal and chemicals and winter air, and when I finally yanked hard enough to snap it, the strand recoiled and the loose end slapped against my cheek, warm and alive. Somewhere in my apartment, a soft rustle answered the sound of fabric shifting in the dark, and I realized I was not alone with the scarf anymore. I didn't sleep after the scarf. I sat on the edge of my bed, with the bathroom light on, staring at my own hands like they belonged to someone else, waiting for another strand to slide out of my sleeve or my throat or the seams of my clothes. When the sun finally came up, it felt thin and cold, like daylight was just another layer of snow. I called the officer again. Voicemail. I called my building manager to ask for real camera footage from the hallway. He told me the cameras had been down for maintenance for weeks, like that was a normal thing to admit with a straight face. I packed an overnight bag anyway. I told myself I'd stay at a hotel. I'd file a report in person. I'd get away from the door, away from the porch, away from the feeling that my apartment had become a stage. But when I opened my closet to grab a coat, something heavy thumped against the floor from the top shelf. A cardboard box, small and clean, like it had been waiting. On the lid, in black marker, was one word: boots. My stomach tightened so hard I thought I might throw up right there, into the laundry basket. I didn't touch it for a full minute. I stood perfectly still, listening for any sound that would prove someone was inside the apartment with me holding their breath. Nothing. The radiator clicked again, and the apartment felt like it was mocking me, with normalcy. I should have left. I should have called 911. Instead, I grabbed the box with a towel-like fabric could block whatever this was, and carried it to the kitchen table. The cardboard was cold enough to sting through the towel. The tape was neat. A single strip, as if whoever sealed it cared about presentation. I cut it open with scissors and lifted the flaps. 2 snow boots sat inside, black leather, thick soles, brand new except for the faint grey film of ash around the stitching. They looked expensive. They looked practical. They looked like something you'd buy before a blizzard. And they were wrong. The wrongness wasn't obvious until I tried to lift one. It was too heavy, like it had been filled with wet sand. I tilted it and heard a soft clack from inside a dry little rattle that made my teeth ache. I turned the boot upside down and shook it. Nothing fell out. The weight stayed. The rattle answered again, deeper, this time like it was coming from the toe. I ran my finger along the inside lining and felt something hard under the insulation. Not a seam, not a shank, something rounded that shifted away from my touch. The boot smelled faintly of snowmelt and metal. The same metallic note as the parka, like the scent had followed me from box to box. On the bottom of the left boot, pressed into the rubber like a manufacturer mark, was a tiny symbol, a snowflake, inside a square. The seller's logo. My hands started shaking so badly, I had to set the boot down. The scarf was gone. I had locked it in a suitcase and shoved it under my bed, but in that moment I could feel it anyway, as if hair had become a memory in my skin. I grabbed the scissors again, and hesitated, because part of me still wanted the boots to be normal, but the weight dared me. I cut into the inner lining near the ankle, expecting foam, expecting padding. The blade snagged on something fibrous. I pulled, and the lining tore open with a sound like paper ripping. A thin dust puffed out grey, dry, and wrong, coating my gloves. Underneath was not insulation. It was a bundle of cloth, wrapped tight with black thread. I unwound the thread with the tip of the scissors and peeled back the cloth. Bone. Small, pale pieces stacked together, like someone had packed them the way you pack fragile ornaments. The first one I recognized was a knuckle, because it had the smooth curve of a joint, the kind you see in anatomy diagrams. Then a longer piece rolled free and tapped the table. A finger bone, cleaned. Dried. Too light to make the boot that heavy, which meant there were more. I kept unwrapping like I was possessed by the need to reach the end of the horror. More bones emerged, not just fingers, tiny ribs, thin and curved like bird bones, except the ends were squared off in a way that made my stomach lurch. A tooth fell out, last yellowed at the root, and it clicked against the scissors with a polite little sound like it was asking to be noticed. I backed away from the table, shaking my head, whispering no, like the word could rewind time. My phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't touch it. It buzzed again. A text notification lit the screen. They walked here. Another buzz. Keep walking. The messages were from an unknown number. No caller ID. No name. Just a line of intent. I looked at the boots again and realized the soles were not clean. The tread was packed with something dark and granular, not dirt. I leaned in and my vision narrowed. It was ash, mixed with tiny white flecks embedded in the grooves. Bone dust. The boots weren't just carrying bones. They were made to grind them into the ground. Something in me snapped into panic so sharp it felt like clarity. I grabbed a trash bag, scooped the boots into it without looking, and tied it shut. I ran down the hall to the stairwell because the elevator felt like a trap. Halfway down, my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. On the third ring, I answered without meaning to, like my thumb had betrayed me. I didn't say hello. I listened. All I heard was breathing slow and wet, as if the person on the other end had been running. Then a voice low and calm said, "They don't like being packed." The line went dead. I sprinted the last flight and shoved through the lobby doors into the cold. The street wind slapped my face, and for a second I tasted that metallic scent again like it lived in my mouth now. I threw the bag into the outdoor dumpster and slammed the lid. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys. I crouched to pick them up, and that's when I saw the snow around the dumpster. It was pristine. No tracks. Not even my own, because the wind had already started to erase them. I stood and stared, dizzy, as a memory hit me, the photo of my porch, the untouched snow, the timing, the perfection. Something wanted the snow clean. Something wanted proof. I forced myself to walk back inside, because if I ran, I'd look like prey. In the elevator mirror, I noticed grey dust smeared across my glove, and in it, a single black strand, caught and looped the way hair curls when it's wet. When I reached my floor, the hallway smelled like wet wool again. My doormat was empty. My door was closed. My deadbolt was still locked. But on the carpet, directly in front of my door, pressed into the fibers like someone had set a stamp down and lifted it carefully, they were two perfect boot prints, side by side, facing my peephole. And inside the tread pattern, tiny white flecks glittered like salt. I knelt and touched one print with my fingertip. The fibers sprang back, but the ash stayed. Something slid under the door, an envelope pushed so slowly it felt intentional. I dragged it inside with a hanger. Inside was a thermal receipt, item winter boots, contents verified, time 2:1:3. Then GPS coordinates, and one line, "If you won't walk there, I'll walk to you." I called the officer back and got voicemail again. When I looked up, the boot prints were already fading, the ash smeared like someone's thumb had dragged through them. My phone buzzed, with one more message from the unknown number, next box. Don't let it ring too long. Behind me in my bedroom, my closet door clicked once, like a latch releasing. The closet door had never clicked like that before. It was the kind of sound you hear in a quiet house at night, when wood settles and you pretend it's nothing. But this click had timing. It answered the text like punctuation. I stood in the hallway with my phone in my hand, staring at the bedroom door, arguing with myself about what was worse, opening the closet or waiting for whatever was inside to open itself. I chose the thing that made me feel less powerless. I went in. The bedroom air felt sealed, stale, like it had been held overnight. My suitcase was still shoved under the bed, with the scarf locked inside, and for a second I swore I could smell wet wool, even through the zipper. I crossed to the closet and yanked the door open. On the floor, centered between my shoes like it had been staged, was another small box. Clean cardboard. One strip of black tape. No shipping label, no address, no explanation, just a square snowflake logo stamped in the corner. My stomach turned. I didn't bring it in. I didn't even want to breathe near it. But my phone buzzed again. Open it. I carried the box to the kitchen with a towel again because part of my brain still believed barriers mattered. This time, I didn't use scissors. I tore the tape with my fingers, and the adhesive resisted just long enough to feel like skin. When the flap sprang open, I saw a phone. A cheap black burner, the kind you see in crime shows sitting on top of a folded sheet of paper. The screen was dark. The phone looked dead. I stared at it, waiting for it to stay dead, waiting for my nerves to settle, waiting for the universe to admit it was a prank. Then the screen lit up by itself. No boot up logo, no battery indicator, just an incoming call. The caller ID read, "You." The ringtone was a thin, cheerful jingle that didn't belong in my apartment, like a child's toy playing in a morgue. I didn't touch it. The phone rang anyway, bright and stubborn, and every ring made the air feel tighter. My own phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "Don't let it go," to voicemail. I understood suddenly that the threat wasn't in the sound. The threat was that it could demand my attention without asking permission. I answered. The moment my thumb hit the screen, the ringtone stopped and the line opened with a soft hiss, like someone breathing through fabric. For a second, nobody spoke. I could hear a low electrical hum on the other end, an empty room, tone distant and patient. Then a voice said my full name, not the way a screen prints it, the way a person says it when they know you. Calm male, maybe middle-aged, with the careful neutrality people use when they're about to deliver bad news. I didn't respond. I kept the phone on speaker, as if distance could help. The voice continued. "You threw the boots away. That was rude." My mouth went dry. I managed. "Who are you?" The voice made a small sound that might have been a laugh or a sigh. "You bought a box and expected silence." I glanced at my laptop at the tab I'd closed days ago, as if the device could confess for me. The voice said, "Look at your front door." I didn't move. "Now," the voice added, still calm, "don't make me repeat myself." My legs carried me before my brain agreed. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Then the voice said, "Not the peephole, the camera." I went back to the laptop and pulled up the doorbell feed. My stomach dropped. The live view showed my front door from the inside at waist height, as if the camera had been placed in my hallway. I could see the chain latch. I could see the deadbolt. I could see the thin strip of light under the door, and in the lower corner of the frame, the edge of a black sleeve, barely in view like someone was holding the camera just out of sight. I turned in a full circle hard, hammering, because that meant the camera was inside with me, or someone had duplicated the feed, or I was losing my mind. The voice on the burner phone said, "You're wondering how. That's not important. What's important is that you answer when I call." My skin prickled. "What do you want?" I heard him shift slightly, as if he leaned closer to the microphone. "I want you to stop treating this like entertainment." The sentence hit harder than a threat, because it was aimed directly at the part of me that had turned fear into content. I swallowed and tried to sound steady. "I called the police." "You called and lied," he replied instantly. "You didn't say where you really bought it. You didn't say why you opened it. You didn't say what you were hoping to find. You wanted a story." Heat climbed my face, anger mixing with shame, because he was right, and because he had no right to know. Under his words, I started to hear something else on the line. Faint at first, like audio playing quietly in the background. It took me a second to recognize it, my own radiator clicking in my apartment, the same metallic tick in the same rhythm. The sound was coming through the phone from the other side, delayed by a breath, like an echo. I whispered, "Are you in my building?" He didn't confirm. He said, "I sent you a phone because your other phone is for your friends. This one is for the truth." The line hissed, and then a new sound joined, soft and wet. Breathing, not his. Another person closer to the microphone, breathing like they were trying not to be heard. My stomach clenched. "Who else is there?" the voice said. "Someone who likes the scarf. Someone who likes hair." I backed away from the counter until my back hit the wall. The voice went on. "You have two choices. You can hang up and pretend this is random, and then you can watch your world get smaller every night at 213. Or you can listen, and we can keep you alive long enough to understand what you bought." My hand shook so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. "I didn't buy this," I said, meaning the calls, the boots, the prints, the way my apartment felt occupied. "You paid," he replied simply. "No, answer the question." "I don't know what question." There was a beat of silence, and then his voice became almost gentle. "Where did the coordinates lead?" he asked. I froze. I hadn't gone. I hadn't even typed them in. The receipt was still on my table, the numbers swimming. "I didn't go," I said. In the quiet that followed, I heard the other breathing again, closer, like the person was leaning toward the phone to listen to my fear. Then the voice said flat again, "Then I'll make it easier." The burner phone vibrated in my hand. A new message popped up on its screen. It wasn't text. It was a photo. It showed my hallway outside my apartment, taken from ceiling height, looking down like a real security camera. My front door was scented. My doormat was scented. And on the mat was a small box with the snowflake logo. Under the photo, a caption, "It's already there." The timestamp in the corner read 213. The burner phone rang again immediately. Caller ID inside. 2 slow knocks sounded from the hallway side of my door. I slid the chain on, cracked the door, and saw it the small box with the snowflake logo sitting perfectly square on my mat. Next to it, a single black hair curled into a neat loop, placed like a signature. As I reached toward the box, the burner phone on my palm went silent on its own, and the call connected anyway. I didn't say a word. I just listened. On the line was my own breathing, slow and asleep, recorded close enough to catch the wet click in my throat. Then the voice whispered, "Now open it." The box on my kitchen table felt like it was listening. I kept my eyes on it, the way you keep your eyes on a stray dog that's too still, too quiet, deciding whether it's scared or hungry. The burner phone lay beside it, screen dark, but I could still hear my own sleeping breath from the call, that intimate, wet little sound you never notice until someone plays it back to you like a confession. I peeled the tape with a dish towel between my fingers, pretending fabric could make me safer. Inside, there was no filler, no prank note, no cute thanks for your purchase. There was a USB drive the size of my thumb, matte black, with a tiny snowflake etched into the plastic like a manufacturer's mark. Under it was a folded slip of paper printer, clean one. Sentence, "USE, your own screen." The burner phone buzzed once. Not a ring, just a vibration, like a warning. A text appeared from an unknown number. "No Wi-Fi. No excuse." I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself there was no sane reason to plug a random drive into anything I owned. Then I realized that my own screen wasn't a suggestion. It was part of the punishment. If there was something on that drive, it wasn't meant to be watched from a distance. It was meant to happen inside my home, inside my routine, inside my head. I dug an old laptop out of a closet, the one I used in college, the one that took 5 minutes to boot and had a cracked corner. I turned off the router anyway, yanked the cable from the wall, even powered down my phone because paranoia had become a skill I was suddenly good at. The USB slid into the port with a soft, perfect click. No prompt, no scan and fix. Just a folder that appeared on the desktop as if it had been there all along. It was labeled Sleep in all caps. Inside were dozens of video files, each named like a timestamp. 021300, the 13th of February 2007, the 13th of February 2014. 7 seconds each, like someone had chopped my nights into heartbeats. I clicked the first file, and my bedroom filled the screen. My bedroom. Same bedspread, same crooked lamp, same half-shoved suitcase under the bed, same winter darkness at the window. The camera angle was high and wide, looking down from near the ceiling like a security feed. In the top corner, a digital overlay clock, read 2:13. The clip showed me asleep on my side, mouth slightly open, one arm thrown across the pillow like I was holding onto something. Nothing moved, except the slow rise and fall of my chest. Then the file ended. Another click. Same view. Same 2:13. This time my bedroom door eased open a few inches. A darker shape filled the crack, blocking the hallway light. It didn't step in. It just stood there, patient, watching as if the room belonged to it, and I was the guest. 7 seconds. Done. I clicked again, and the pattern grew teeth. The figure moved farther in. It crossed the floor without shoes, gliding more than walking, and stopped beside my bed. The hands were gloved, dark, steady. One hand hovered over my chest, as if measuring my breath. Another clip showed that same hand, reaching down toward the gap under my bed and tugging something out. When the object slid into view, my stomach clenched my suitcase. The one with the scarf locked inside. The figure set it on the floor, unzipped it with a careful slowness, and the clip ended before I saw what came out. I sat back so fast, my chair legs screeched. My heart was hammering like I'd been running, but I hadn't moved more than my finger on a trackpad. The burner phone lit up with a call. Caller ID. You. I didn't answer. It rang 3 times and stopped. A text replaced it. Keep watching. You asked for evidence. I forced my hand back to the laptop. I clicked to later file. In it, the suitcase was open on the floor. My scarf lay across the carpet like a strip of spilled ink, the woven strands too glossy to be yarn, too alive to be anything else. The figure lifted it with both hands, and even in the grainy footage, I could see long black strands catching the light like wet wire. It held the scarf near its face, as if smelling it. And then, this is the part that made my skin go cold, all the way to my teeth. It turned its head toward the camera. Not accidentally. Not because it heard something. It looked directly into the lens, the way the porch figure had looked into my doorbell camera, like it was making eye contact with me across time. The clip ended and the next file began, and the figure was closer to the smoke detector on my ceiling. It reached up and twisted it slightly. The overlay clock still read 2:13. The figure paused, as if listening, then lowered its hand and stepped back. For a fraction of a second, the footage caught the underside of the smoke detector, and I saw something that did not belong. A tiny glass circle, a pinpoint reflection, a lens. My mouth went dry. I hadn't noticed the day slipping away while I watched myself sleep, but suddenly I was aware of every second. I shoved the chair back, grabbed a step stool, and climbed up to the smoke detector in my bedroom. It wasn't screwed in. It wasn't even snug. It popped loose with a gentle twist. Inside there was no battery, no wiring, no dust. Where the battery should have been, a pea-sized camera stared back at me. A thread-thin black wire ran into the ceiling through a hole that looked freshly drilled, and wrapped around that wire like a deliberate decoration was a single long black hair tied in a neat little knot. My hands shook so hard, the plastic housing rattled. The burner phone rang again. Caller ID. Inside. I answered before the second ring ended because the idea of it going to voicemail suddenly felt worse than hearing the voice. Stop, I said, but it came out like begging. The calm voice on the other end sounded pleased, like he'd been waiting for me to catch up. You found the eye, he said. Now you understand. We don't send boxes to strangers. We send them to participants. I didn't agree to this, I whispered. You agreed when you paid, he replied, immediate and flat. You wanted real. You wanted proof. You wanted to open something and feel your stomach turn. Congratulations. I swallowed, tasting metal. Where are you? A soft exhale, almost a laugh. Close enough to see how you hold your breath when you're scared. I backed away from the ceiling, as if distance mattered. I'm calling the police. You already called, he said, and the casual certainty in his tone made my blood run colder than the winter air outside. You lied. That's why you're still alone. My throat tightened. What do you want? There was a pause, and behind his voice I heard another sound, faint but unmistakable. My own radiator, clicking the exact rhythm, the exact metallic tick, as if the call had borrowed my apartment's heartbeat. "I want you on camera," he said quietly. "I want you watching. I want you to understand that the screen is not a barrier. It's a window." I hung up, chest heaving, and I did the only thing that felt like action. I grabbed my keys and coat and got out into the hallway. The corridor was empty. No wet footprints. No smell. But my mailbox downstairs was slightly open, like someone had just touched it. Inside there was a thin padded envelope with no stamp, no postmark. Only my name typed cleanly. And beneath it a time 213. I didn't open it in the lobby. I didn't even take the elevator. I climbed the stairs fast enough that my lungs burned. Back in my apartment, I set the envelope on the table and stared at the stove clock. It read 2:12 a.m. I hadn't noticed the hours vanish while I watched myself sleep. My doorbell camera pinged my phone with a motion alert. The live feed loaded slowly, buffering like it was hesitant to show me what was outside. Then the porch appeared, snow falling sideways, and a figure stood under my porch light, holding something flat and rectangular cradled like a baby. A tablet. The figure looked up into the camera and nodded once, like confirming delivery. My stove clock flipped to 2:13. The second the clock hit 2:13, my apartment felt different, like the air pressure dropped. The light above my sink flickered once, not a power surge, more like a wink. My phone vibrated with another doorbell alert, but this time it wasn't motion. It was a new device notification, an unfamiliar name trying to join my network, even though my router was unplugged darkroom. I stood there, staring at it, and then I heard the soft scrape of something sliding under my front door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The burner phone lit up on the counter without ringing, screen glowing like an eye opening in the dark. One line of text appeared, "It's already inside." I snatched a kitchen knife on reflex, hating myself for it, because a knife in an apartment is bravery theater, and whoever was doing this didn't need a blade to win. I approached the door and looked down. A padded envelope lay half under the door, the same one from my mailbox, now somehow here, as if the building itself had swallowed it and spit it out at my feet. I hooked it with the knife tip and dragged it fully inside. The envelope wasn't sealed. It opened like it had been opened before. Inside was a tablet, cheap, and black screen already on. No lock screen, no home icons. Just a live video feed of a room I didn't recognize at first because it was almost completely dark. The camera quality was too good for a cheap tablet, the kind of low-light clarity that made shadows look wet. In the center of the frame was a single metal chair, the kind you see in basements and back rooms, cold utilitarian. The floor around it looked like concrete. The only light came from somewhere off-camera, a thin gray wash that made everything feel underwater. At the top of the screen, small text read, "Live." Beneath it was a number that made my stomach drop, 117 watching. A chat scrolled on the right side in pale text, like a live stream on a platform I'd never used. "Turn it around. He's finally on. Winterbox guy. Show the door. Don't let him leave." For a moment I couldn't understand how there were people watching anything, because my router was unplugged, my Wi-Fi dead, my phone on cellular, and yet the tablet's video was smooth, no buffering, no loading wheel. Then the camera feed shifted slightly, as if whoever was filming had adjusted their grip. The chair stayed centered. A soft sound came through the tablet's speakers, barely audible, like distant breathing in a room full of dust. My palms went slick. The burner phone rang. "Caller ID inside." I answered without looking away from the tablet. "What is this?" I said, and my voice sounded small, like a kid caught somewhere they shouldn't be. The calm voice came through, steady as ever. "That," he said, "is the room you bought access to." I swallowed hard. "I didn't buy. You paid," he cut in bored with the argument. "You clicked. You watched. You shared the idea in your head that nothing on a screen is real until it touches you. So we're fixing that." On the tablet, the chat sped up. "He's hearing us. Wave." Ask him about the scarf. Show him the hair. My throat tightened. People are watching, I whispered. People always watch, the voice said. The difference is tonight they can comment. The feed jumped. For a split second, the dark room vanished, replaced by my own kitchen from an angle I'd never seen, as if a camera were mounted above my cabinets, looking down on me standing at my counter holding the tablet. My face looked sick in the overhead light, eyes too wide, shoulders hunched like I was bracing for impact. The chat exploded. There he is. Look at him shaking. He found the eye. Did he pull it out? Show us. The smoke detector. Then the feed snapped back to the dark room. I felt the world tilt. That's my apartment, I said, into the phone voice cracking. Everything is your apartment, he replied, and there was something almost tender in the way he said it, like he was describing a home renovation. Look again. The dark room feed brightened slightly, and details surfaced: a furnace duct along the ceiling, a pipe wrapped in insulation, a painted cinder block wall. It wasn't some faraway dungeon. It looked like a utility space. A basement. My building's basement. I knew it because there was a specific green paint on the lower half of the wall, the same institutional color my landlord used in the stairwell. My heart hammered. The chat kept scrolling. Basement. It's his basement. Told you. Chair's ready. Put the coat on the chair. Let him smell it. The tablet speaker hissed softly, and then a new sound joined it, a faint clink like metal tapping concrete. Not from the video. From somewhere in my apartment. I turned my head slow, scanning my kitchen. Nothing moved. But the sound came again, closer this time, as if someone had set something down gently on the other side of my bedroom wall. Do you hear that? I asked. The voice didn't answer directly. Your audience wants progress, he said. They're tired of unboxing. They want you to go to the room. No, I said, surprised by the strength of it. I'm not going anywhere. He sighed, and the sound traveled through the phone like a cold draft. Then, I'll bring the room to you. The tablet feed flickered. The dark room was still there, but now the camera had moved. It was no longer facing the chair. It was facing a doorway, slightly ajar, and beyond the doorway was another darkness. The chat went frantic. Open it. Open the door. Show him what's behind it. On my end, in my real apartment, I heard my closet door click, once the same sound from before the latch releasing with intention. I froze. The burner phone voice dropped lower. You understand the rule, he said. When it's 2-1-3, you answer. When you open a box, you don't get to choose what comes out. The tablet feed cut again to my kitchen overhead view for a heartbeat. I was still standing there, but behind me, in the reflection of my microwave door, a shape existed that I couldn't feel in the room. A tall hooded figure, standing perfectly still in my hallway, head tilted, watching me watch the tablet. The chat erupted like a crowd at a game. Behind him. Turn around. Turn around right now. Don't you dare turn around. Let it happen. I couldn't move. My muscles locked, mind screaming two opposite commands. The burner phone voice sounded almost amused. They're split, he said. Half want you to run. Half want you to learn. I forced air into my lungs. This is insane, I said. This is illegal. A pause. The word you mean is irreversible, he corrected. The tablet feed returned to the dark room. The doorway in that room opened wider, by itself slowly, as if pushed by a hand just out of frame. Darkness spilled into the doorway like liquid. Then a gloved hand appeared on the edge of the frame, holding something small and metallic. A key. It dangled from the fingers and swung gently, catching the thin light. The chat flooded with one repeated phrase over and over, IT fits. It fits. It fits. In my hallway, my deadbolt turned with a soft, careful click, the way a lock sounds when someone has the right key and takes their time. The chain latch was still on, but the door eased inward until the chain went taut, and the gap opened just enough to let cold air slide into my apartment like a living thing. The burner phone voice whispered, "Wave to them." And on the tablet, the overhead camera view of my kitchen appeared again. Only this time the hooded figure was no longer in the reflection. It was standing in my doorway, framed by the crack of hall light, one gloved hand lifting slowly, as if greeting an audience that was already cheering. The hooded figure stayed in the doorway like a cutout, pinned to my life, framed by the thin wedge of hall light and the silver line of the chain pulled tight. My tablet kept showing the overhead view of my kitchen, the chat moving so fast it looked like static, and my burner phone pressed cold against my palm as the calm voice whispered, "Wave," to them. I didn't wave. I couldn't. My fingers were locked around the knife handle, knuckles white, and all I could think was that this was the moment. Horror movies. Love the moment where you do something stupid because you're scared, and then you pay for it. The figure lifted its hand anyway, slow, almost polite, as if demonstrating for the audience. The chat exploded. "Do it, do it, do it," like a crowd demanding a trick. The calm voice said, "Good. Now listen. The next box isn't on your porch. It's where you tried not to go." The figure's other hand slipped into the gap of the half-open door and placed something on the floor just inside the chain's reach. A folded paper napkin stained brown at the edges, like it had been dragged through slush and set down to dry. The figure didn't push past the chain. It didn't fight. It simply placed the napkin, tapped it twice with one gloved finger, and stepped back out of sight, as if it had already won without entering. My door eased shut on its own, and the deadbolt clicked, not locking me in, but reminding me it could. The burner phone stopped being a phone and became a metronome screen glowing with a single line, "Pick it up." I stared at the napkin for a long second, then hooked it with the knife tip and dragged it across the floor like a dead thing. When I unfolded it, the smell hit first cigarette ash and wet earth and something sour like old coffee spilled into snow. On the inside, written in thick black marker, were GPS coordinates, and a time 0, 2, 1, 3. Below that was one sentence in the same blocky handwriting as the boots box you left it there. My skin prickled. "I didn't go," I said aloud, to nobody, because denying it out loud was the only way to stop my brain from sprinting into conclusions. The tablet chat flooded with one repeated phrase, "Forest, forest, forest." My burner phone rang once, not with a ringtone but with a sharp electronic chirp like an alarm. I answered and the calm voice didn't bother with greetings. "You're going," he said. "No," I said, and my voice surprised me by sounding angry instead of terrified. "You can't make me." The voice exhaled softly. "We already did," he replied. "When you opened the first box, you became a route. We can send you anywhere along it." On the tablet, the overhead view flickered and was replaced by a street-level camera angle outside my building. The snow fell sideways under a street lamp. The camera pointed at my front entrance from across the road, the same low angle as the earlier photo, like someone was filming from inside a parked car. In the reflection of the glass doors, I could see the lobby lights and a shape moving inside. Me. The chat went wild. He's still there like they were betting on a race. I felt the floor tilt. Again, that sick sense that my location didn't belong to me anymore. "If I don't go?" I asked. The calm voice became almost patient. "Then the next delivery happens inside your bedroom," he said, "and you won't like what it brings with it." I thought of the smoke detector, the tiny lens, the knot of hair, the videos of my door opening at 213, and my stomach folded. I didn't put on my coat. I didn't grab my keys neatly. I moved like I was underwater, snatching essentials with shaking hands, wallet, flashlight, the burner phone and the tablet, because I understood that refusing the tablet would just mean watching was done to me instead of by me. I didn't take the knife. Something about it felt childish now, like pretending a butter knife could stop a house fire. In the hallway, the air was stale and empty. No wet wool smell. No footsteps. I took the stairs because the elevator felt like a sealed box, and every landing looked the same. Every shadow looked like a hood. When I pushed through the lobby doors, the cold hit hard enough to sting my eyes. The snow had picked up, and my breath turned white immediately. The tablet vibrated in my hands as the chat reacted to my movement in real time. "He's out. He's out." Like they were cheering a performer onto stage. My car was parked at the curb, half buried under fresh powder. I scraped at the door handle with my thumb, fingers numb, and when the lock finally clicked, the interior smelled faintly metallic like pennies. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself everything had an explanation. I started the engine, and the radio came on by itself, to a station that was nothing but low static. Under the static, I heard a faint clicking the same rhythm as my radiator. I turned the radio off. The clicking kept going, not through speakers, but from inside the dash, as if something small was tapping on plastic from within. My phone, my real phone, buzzed in my pocket, even though I'd powered it down. When I pulled it out, the screen was black, but the camera app notification banner was there, anyway, floating, like a ghost message. Motion detected. 0, 2, 1, 3. I didn't open it. I drove. The GPS coordinates on the napkin were in the woods outside town, an access road that led into a state park I'd never visited in winter, because who does that on purpose? As I left the streetlights behind, the snow got heavier, and the world narrowed into 2 headlight tunnels and a wall of darkness. Every time my wipers swept, it felt like a raising and revealing the same threat. The tablet stayed on in my passenger seat, not showing maps, not showing directions, only the livestream chat and a simple arrow that pointed forward like a command. The viewer count climbed 152189203, and I felt my throat tighten because the number made it feel real, in a way one stalker never could. Around 2:05, my dashboard clock flickered once and reset to 2:12. I hit the button to change it back. It returned to 2:12 like it preferred that time. The access road appeared as a narrow cut into the trees unplowed, half hidden by drifts. I turned in anyway. The tires crunched over packed snow and the car rocked as if the road had bones underneath it. Deeper in the woods, swallowed sound. No distant traffic. No wind in branches. Just my engine and my breathing and the occasional soft ping of ice hitting the undercarriage. The arrow on the tablet remained perfectly steady, pointing me deeper, and the chat shifted tone from excitement to hunger. Closer, closer, like they could taste the ending. At 2:12, my headlights caught something ahead in the road. A small mound of snow shaped too neatly to be natural. I braked, and the car slid a few feet before stopping with a soft, sickening ease like the road had turned to glass. My heart hammered. The mound sat in the center of the lane, and stuck out of it was the corner of a cardboard box dark against the white. My burner phone rang. Caller ID. You, I answered, and the calm voice said, "Don't leave it. Don't touch it with bare hands. And don't look behind you when you pick it up." My stomach dropped. "Why?" I whispered. "Because they're waiting to see if you will," he replied, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. The viewer count on the tablet jumped again, and the chat filled with laughing emojis rendered as simple characters, crude and eager. I turned the car off, and the sudden silence was so complete it made my ears ring. When I stepped out, the cold slapped me hard. Snow squeaked under my shoes, loud in the dead quiet. My flashlight, beam, cut through swirling flakes and landed on the box. Old cardboard, sealed with black tape, stamped with the snowflake logo. Beside it, half covered, was another thing. A dirty napkin corner poking out of snow like a flag, and on it a single long black hair frozen into a curve. I swallowed and forced myself to kneel. The instruction echoed in my skull. Don't look behind you, so of course my body wanted to. I kept my eyes locked on the box as I brushed snow away. The tape was brittle with cold. The box felt heavier than cardboard should, like it held something that didn't want to be moved. I slid my fingers under it and lifted. As I stood, the snow behind the box shifted with a soft whisper. Not footsteps, more like fabric dragging over powder. My skin prickled so intensely it almost hurt. The chat screamed in text, "Don't turn," like a chorus. I didn't. I carried the box back to the car, arms shaking, and as I opened my driver door, I saw it in the side mirror without meaning to, a set of fresh footprints leading from the tree line to within a few feet of where I'd knelt. Barefoot prints, deep and deliberate toes, spread wide as if the person was heavy or the snow was soft. There were no prints leading back to the woods. My hands went numb. I threw the box into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and locked it, even though locks felt like jokes now. The burner phone went quiet. The tablet flickered, and for a moment the livestream feed showed something other than chat. A camera angle from somewhere in the woods aimed at my car. Headlights glowing, snow falling, my silhouette frantic inside. The frame was steady, as if the camera was mounted on a tripod. The viewer count displayed in the corner, 221. Then the screen snapped back to the arrow pointing forward, and a new line appeared, in bold text across the top. Return to sender. My dashboard clock rolled over to 2:13, and from inside the box on my passenger seat, something made a soft, unmistakable click, like a plastic button being pressed from within. That click wasn't loud. It wasn't a jump scare sound. It was worse, because it was practical, like a device doing what it was designed to do. I stared at the box on my passenger seat as if it might open itself, and my brain tried to bargain. Maybe it was just shifting. Maybe it was the tape cracking. Maybe the cold made cardboard pop. Then the click came again, rhythmic now, and I understood it was not a box noise. It was a recorder noise. I drove back on autopilot, hands tight on the wheel, eyes flicking between the snow-choked road and the passenger seat, like the box might grow a hand. The access road spit me back onto the main highway as if the woods were done with me, and the moment I hit streetlights again, my tablet's arrow vanished, and the live stream chat returned, full-screen ravenous and triumphant. He got it! Got it like they'd won a prize. I didn't read it. I didn't want to know what strangers wanted from my fear. In my apartment parking spot, the snow was untouched again, too perfect, like the night was resetting its own evidence. I carried the box upstairs with my coat sleeve between my hands and the cardboard, and the whole time the soft click, click, click continued from inside, steady as a heartbeat. In my kitchen, I set the box down and stepped back, breathing hard. The burner phone rang. Caller ID inside. I answered, and the calm voice sounded satisfied. Open it, he said. No, I said, because saying no was all I had left that still felt like mine. The voice paused, then softened, as if speaking to a child refusing medicine. You already did, he replied. The device started when it crossed the coordinates. That's the point. You brought it home for us. My throat went tight. What is it recording? I asked. Everything you pretend doesn't count, he said. The line went dead. The burner phone screen went black, but the room didn't feel quieter. The box clicked again. I peeled the tape slowly, forcing my hands not to shake, because panic made my fingers clumsy, and I didn't want to give the box that satisfaction. The flaps opened and the smell hit first. Cold plastic and faint cigarette ash. The same scent as the napkin, like whoever handled these items always had smoke on their fingers. Inside, taped to the inner lid, was a small black audio recorder, the cheap kind journalists use, with a red light blinking steadily. It was already running. Someone had taped it in, so it would record the moment the box was opened, the moment the air changed, the moment my breath caught. Beneath it was another sheet of paper. Press. Play. At 0213. I looked at my stove clock. It read 221A. The numbers felt wrong, like I'd lost time again. The recorder continued blinking, capturing my breathing, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the subtle tremor of my hands against the cardboard. I didn't wait. I pressed stop. The red light went solid, then off. Silence. A relief so sharp, it almost made me dizzy. Then the recorder vibrated once in my palm like a living thing annoyed at being interrupted, and the red light turned itself back on. Recording resumed. My stomach dropped. I pressed stop. Again. Harder. The recorder ignored me. The light blinked steadily. I stared at the device, then at the box, then at the paper, that commanded a time, as if the time were a door. I grabbed the recorder and ripped the tape off with shaking fingers. The adhesive left a sticky smear on the plastic like saliva. Under the recorder, tucked into the box, was a second item, a tiny SD card in a clear sleeve, and on the sleeve was another snowflake logo and one handwritten word. Archive. My fingers went numb. This wasn't a prank. This was a workflow. I backed away from the table until my shoulder hit the wall. My mind flicked through options, like channels, smash the recorder, throw it out the window, drown it in the sink. But the scarf had come back from the dumpster. The boots had left ash prints inside my hallway. The tablet had shown my kitchen from above. Destroying things didn't end them. It only proved I was afraid. The stove clock ticked forward, and every second felt like it was dragging me toward that number again. Wu, Sen, Yi, Siling. I sat on the floor with the recorder in my lap, watching the red light blink, and I realized it wasn't just recording my room. It was recording my waiting. My fear of a specific minute had become part of the content. The tablet chimed softly, not a notification sound I recognized, and the screen displayed one line, 0213. Playback is required. The livestream chat was back faster than ever, full of commands and taunts and bets, and the viewer count kept rising like a tide. I tried calling 911. My phone showed full bars. The call failed, instantly. No ring, no busy signal, just a dead click. I tried again. Same. The burner phone rang once, and when I answered, there was no calm voice this time. There was only my own breathing, recorded loud in my ear, and beneath it, a faint rustle like fabric sliding across carpet. The line cut. I looked up at my bedroom door. The gap beneath it was dark, but I could see a thin line of hall light flicker, as if someone passed in front of it. I couldn't tell if that was real or if my eyes were finally lying to me to keep up. The stove clock crawled toward 300, and then reset itself with a soft blink, back to 212. My blood went ice cold. The minute before the trap, my tablet screen flashed, and the livestream chat vanished, replaced by a simple interface, play. My hand shook so badly, the recorder rattled against my knee. No, I whispered, but my voice sounded far away, like someone else, in another room. The stove clock flipped to 213 by itself, and the moment it did, the recorder stopped blinking. The red light went solid, waiting. The apartment felt held in a breath. I pressed play. The speaker crackled, then filled my kitchen with the sound of wind, not outside wind, but wind recorded close, loud, as if the microphone had been held to a door crack. Under it, I heard my own footsteps. On snow, my own breathing, the access road, the moment I knelt by the box. Then, in the background, a second set of sounds emerged. Bare feet pressing into powder, soft and deliberate, so close to the microphone it made my skin crawl. On the recording, my breathing quickened exactly the way it had, and then a whisper, low and delighted, brushed the mic. Don't look. I froze. That whisper hadn't come through the burner phone. That whisper had been in the woods with me. The recording jumped a cut, like someone edited it, and suddenly I was hearing my apartment, not the woods. The refrigerator hum. The radiator click. My kitchen light flickering once. And in the middle of that domestic soundscape, the calm voice spoke, not through a phone line, but in the room, recorded as if he'd been standing right beside the mic. He's home now. The sound made my throat close because it proved someone had been in my kitchen with a recorder before I ever opened the box. Another cut. The recorder played a clip of my bedroom at night, my sleeping breath close and wet, and then a soft creak as the bed shifted, like someone sat on the edge. My voice, half asleep, mumbled something unintelligible. A different voice answered, thin, excited, almost childlike. He talks when he dreams. The hair on my arms lifted. The recording cut again to something I hadn't lived yet. My front door chain latch, rattling metal, strained, then a sharp snap as if the chain anchor tore from the wall. My own voice screamed raw and sudden, followed by a heavy thud on hardwood, then a wet shuffle like fabric dragging. I shot to my feet so fast the recorder almost flew from my hand. In the hallway, my real front door chain latch began to rattle in perfect sync with the audio, as if the recorder wasn't predicting, but conducting. Metal strained. The screws groaned. The tablet flashed back to the livestream interface, and the viewer count surged, and the chat became one single chant. Play it out. The chain snapped with a sound that felt like it happened inside my chest. My door swung inward, and cold air flooded my apartment like a living thing. The recorder kept playing my own future scream, And then from my real doorway, a gloved hand slid into view, slow, calm, familiar, and the calm voice from the recording whispered through the speaker and the hallway at the same time, overlapping. Perfectly good. Now you can't claim you didn't hear it coming. Cold air poured through my open doorway, and for a second my brain tried to pretend it was just winter, doing winter things, like the snapped chain and the torn screws, weren't proof that something had reached into my apartment and rearranged the rules. I backed up until my calves hit the couch, eyes locked on the gap, waiting for the hooded figure to step fully inside and turn this into the kind of story nobody narrates afterward. But nobody rushed in. Nobody lunged. Instead, something slid across the floor from the hallway into the light like a slow offering, a small box no bigger than a paperback, pushed with careful fingertips, so it stopped exactly on the line where my welcome mat used to be. The recorder in my hand kept playing the overlapping whisper. Good. Now, you can't claim you didn't hear it coming. And my tablet screen flashed the live stream interface again. Viewer count climbing like a fever chat, screaming at me to stay, to run, to look, to not look, to do whatever would make them feel alive. On the other side of the glass, my burner phone vibrated once on the counter, as if reminding me it could speak without permission. I didn't move toward the door. I didn't move away. I just stood there and listened to my own pulse, pounding in my ears, until the recorder finally clicked off by itself, like it had gotten what it wanted. The silence afterward was worse than the audio, because in the silence I could hear the hallway outside my apartment. Nothing. No footsteps retreating. No breath. Just the building settling as if it had accepted this as normal. The box sat on my floor like a dare. I used the edge of a broom to drag it deeper into my kitchen, away from the doorway, away from the cold draft that kept making the hair on my arms lift. The cardboard was clean, too. Clean stamped with the snowflake logo like a brand. There was no tape to fight this time. The lid lifted, as if it had been opened before. Inside was a smartwatch black band glossy face, the kind you'd buy because you like counting steps and pretending data makes you healthier. The screen was already on. It wasn't a welcome screen. It wasn't a pairing prompt. It was a heart monitor interface, with one large number pulsing in the center, 48. Beneath it, a tiny label, BPM. My stomach tightened. I didn't own a smartwatch. I didn't wear one. I held it over my own wrist anyway, out of pure stupid instinct, as if proximity would explain it. The number didn't change. Sushiba. Slow. Too slow for me. Too slow for fear. The burner phone lit up with a call. Caller ID. Inside. I answered, because I was past, believing I could refuse. The calm voice didn't waste time. That's not yours, he said. Then, whose is it? I snapped, and anger surprised me because it sounded like something I used to have before this started. The voice remained steady. Someone you ignored, he replied. On the tablet, the live-streamed chat flooded with a new chant that made my throat close. Watch the drop. Watch the drop. Watch the drop. What drop? I whispered. The calm voice said. The moment you realize the number means there's still time. I stared at the watch face until my eyes watered. Sushiba. Seshitsi. 47, held for a beat, then 46. Each decrease felt like a footstep moving away from a cliff. Where is the person wearing this? I asked, and my voice cracked on the last word. The calm voice gave a small sigh like I'd asked something obvious. Closer than your audience, he said. Look at the underside. I flipped the watch over with shaking fingers. Etched into the metal back, where a serial number should have been, were coordinates. The same format as the napkin. And beneath them, one word. Basement. My blood went cold. My building, I whispered. Your building, he corrected, and the way he said it made ownership feel like a joke. The watch vibrated sharply in my palm, and the screen flashed not a notification, but a new line of text overlaying the heart rate move. The number dipped again. Sushiwu. Sushise. The chat erupted with frantic encouragement, like I was a contestant on a game show. Go down, he's going down. I wanted to throw the tablet. I wanted to smash the watch. I wanted to slam my door and nail it shut. But the snapped chain had already proven barriers were decorative. I grabbed my flashlight, not because it would save me, but because darkness felt like surrender. I stepped into the hallway. The air immediately smelled faintly of wet wool, and that smell dragged my mind back to the scarf, the strands, the knot tied around the camera wire like a signature. I locked my apartment door out of reflex, even though the deadbolt felt like closing my eyes in a burning room. The stairwell, down to the basement, was at the far end of the corridor. Each step felt louder than it should have, each breath too visible in the cold building air. The tablet stayed in my left hand, like a leash. The livestream chat, a constant swarm, and the watch in my right hand kept vibrating every few seconds. Each buzz, followed by another heartbeat, number dropping like a slow countdown. Sushisan, Sishua, Sushiyi. At the basement door, the metal handle was cold enough to sting. I paused with my hand on it, flashlight beam jittering across the chipped paint. The burner phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from the unknown number appeared on the lock screen. Don't be a hero. Be a witness. My throat tightened because heroes die in these stories and witnesses live long enough to tell them. I pulled the basement door open. The smell hit me first, damp concrete rust, old detergent, and something sour underneath like sweat trapped in fabric for too long. The flashlight beam carved a narrow tunnel through darkness and landed on the green-painted cinder block walls I'd recognized from the live stream. Pipes overhead. A low ceiling. The building's guts. Somewhere deeper, a faint metallic click answered my movement, like something small tapping plastic inside a wall. My watch buzzed again. Sanchadil. The chat on the tablet was hysterical. Now lines blurring. Left. No, right down the hall. Don't turn around. I forced myself forward anyway, each step cautious. Not because I expected a trapdoor, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that the basement was watching back. At the far end of the corridor, a door sat slightly ajar. Behind it, darkness pooled, thick and motionless. The watch dipped to 37. My chest hurt. I pushed the door open with my shoulder and swept the flashlight inside. The beam hit a metal chair in the center of the room, exactly as the live stream had shown, and for a second my brain actually tried to feel relief. See, it's staged. It's set dressing. It's all performance. Then the beam slid lower and found a wrist. A human wrist, pale against the dark. A hand lying limp on the concrete. A black band around it, another watch identical to the one in my hand. My stomach lurched. I took one step closer, and the watch in my palm screamed with vibration, a continuous buzz that felt like an alarm. The heart rate on my screen jumped wildly for 1 second, 526071, like the person had panicked or woken up, and then it plunged. Asha, Shua, Lil. The chat exploded in pure noise. The calm voice came through the burner phone, suddenly, not from my pocket, but from the tablet speaker at full volume, as if the room itself decided to speak, say hello. I froze. The flashlight beam trembled. In the corner of the room beyond the chair, something shifted subtle as fabric settling. A hooded silhouette separated itself from the darkness, not rushing, not threatening, simply standing up from a crouch, like it had been waiting for me to arrive at the exact moment the number hit bottom. The watch in my hand displayed 1, then 0. The vibrations stopped. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like pressure in my ears. The hooded figure tilted its head, and even without seeing a face, I could feel its attention settle on me like a hand on the back of my neck. On the tablet, a single message pinned itself at the top of the screen, as if the whole audience agreed on it. Too late. In my pocket, my real phone dead-powered off, buzzed once anyway like a heartbeat trying to restart. The hooded figure took one slow step toward the chair, and in that movement I saw a glint at its wrist, long black strands woven around its sleeve, cuff hair braided like thread. Then the calm voice, soft, now almost kind, spoke through the tablet in my hand. Don't worry. We have the archive. Now go back upstairs. There's a laptop waiting for you, and you're going to see what your curiosity is worth. I didn't remember turning around. I only remember the moment my legs decided I would live, and then the hallway was rushing past me. The flashlight beam bouncing, breath tearing at my throat. The tablet clutched in my hand like a cursed map. Behind me I heard no chase, no sprinting footsteps, no dramatic lunge, and that was somehow worse, because it meant the hooded figure didn't need to hurry. It meant I was running on a schedule, not away from a person. I slammed through the basement door, and took the stairs two at a time, lungs burning, heart hammering, and the whole time, my mind kept replaying the watch face, hitting 0 the limp wrist in the dark room, the calm voice telling me not to worry, because they had the archive. That word archive made me feel sick, because it meant the person in the basement wasn't just a victim, they were content, filed away like a clip. In the hallway outside my apartment, my door was closed again. The chain latch, which had snapped, was intact, like it had never been torn from the wall. The screw holes were gone. The paint wasn't chipped. It looked repaired with impossible speed, the way a video jump cuts between frames. My stomach dropped. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. I unlocked it with shaking hands, and stepped inside. The apartment lights were on, warm and normal, and my kitchen table was set up like a studio. The burner phone centered the recorder, placed neatly beside it, and my old laptop open and already awake, screen glowing. A new device sat next to it, another laptop, newer, sleeker, the kind I couldn't afford without thinking about it. Its lid was open, and on the screen was a web page, with a dark background and simple text, the kind of minimalist interface that looks clean until you realize it's designed for people who don't want to be found. My tablet vibrated, and the livestream chat reappeared instantly. View account spiking, messages pouring in like a chant. Open it, open it. Don't touch the trackpad, he's gonna see it. I didn't sit. I stood over the laptop, like it might bite. The calm voice didn't call this time. It just spoke through the laptop speakers as if my apartment had been wired for him. You're back, he said. Good. You were starting to think you could leave the story. My throat was raw. There was someone down there, I rasped. You killed them. The voice paused, then answered with careful neutrality. We documented them, he corrected. And we documented you arriving too late. That's the difference between tragedy and proof. My hands clenched. Why me? I demanded. Because you paid to feel something, he said. And because you have an audience who likes watching you pretend you're in control. The newer laptop screen scrolled by itself as if someone were moving a mouse I couldn't see. A page title became visible at the top, Contract Board. Beneath it were listings, formatted like job posts. Only the jobs weren't jobs. There were names, places, times. Some were blurred, some weren't. And one in the middle was highlighted in pale gray, like a selection. The listing title was my name. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. Under the title, the details were laid out in cold bureaucratic bullets. Target verified. Location, winter residence. Preferred time window, 0213. Status open. Beneath that was a photo thumbnail. My porch. My doormat. The same angle as the earlier photo. I stared at it until my vision tunneled. This isn't real, I whispered, but I didn't believe myself. The calm voice sounded almost amused. You've been saying that since the coat, he replied. Scroll. I didn't touch anything. The page scrolled anyway. Under my listing was a section labeled Notes from Client. The text was short, typed cleanly. Subject, purchased, access voluntarily. Subject responds to delivery prompts. Subject has cameras installed. Subject is most compliant when audience count rises. My throat tightened. Client, I said. Who's the client? The calm voice answered softly. Someone who understands you. The livestream chat on the tablet became a roar of speculation and cruelty. It's him, it's Hisself, it's the seller, it's the voice. The laptop showed a button beneath my listing, centered and stark. Accept. Next to it was a smaller line, Bid History. The cursor hovered over accept like a finger poised over a trigger. Stop, I said, and my voice cracked. Stop moving it. The calm voice replied. Then prove you can choose. The cursor clicked bid history on its own. A panel opened showing numbers and timestamps. Bitcoin amounts. Increases. Notes. Most of the bidder names were nonsense strings, but one name made my stomach turn because it felt like a punchline aimed at my life. Return to sender. The most recent bid was placed at 213. The note attached to it read, delivered as requested. My knees went weak. You're going to have someone come here, I whispered. Already did, the voice said. The question is whether you'll watch it happen like a viewer or intervene like a person. The laptop speakers emitted a soft ping, like a chat notification, and a new window popped up over the contract board. Live message from client. The message typed itself on the screen letter by letter, slow enough to feel intimate. You wanted the most viral box. Here's the final unboxing. Beneath the message was a file attachment icon, labeled address. I didn't click it. It opened anyway. A document appeared with a single line of text formatted like a shipping label return address. It wasn't a stranger's address. It wasn't a P.O. box. It was mine. My full name. My apartment number. My city. Perfectly typed. Under that, in smaller font, from you. My stomach lurched. That's not possible, I said, because the human brain will cling to the word impossible like a life raft. The calm voice answered quietly. You've been receiving packages all week. Did you ever see a postmark? I remembered the porch box with no delivery slip, the mailbox envelope with no stamp, the bag returning from the dumpster like a trained dog. My throat closed. How are you doing this? I whispered. The voice didn't explain. It simply said, because you keep opening. The laptop screen changed again. The contract board vanished and was replaced by a live video feed, my own hallway outside my apartment door, filmed from ceiling height, like the earlier photo. The image was crisp, as if the camera were mounted in the corner of the hallway ceiling. My door was centered, in frame. My doormat was centered. The time overlay in the corner read 212. My chest tightened. The burner phone on the table began to ring, bright and cheerful, and the caller ID displayed a single word. Audience. I didn't answer. The laptop feed showed the hallway empty, then a shadow sliding into frame from the stairwell. A hooded figure stepped into view and stopped directly in front of my door, perfectly aligned with the mat, perfectly still. In its gloved hand was a laptop bag. It set the bag down carefully and unzipped it. The time overlay on the feed flipped to 213. The burner phone stopped ringing on its own. My apartment lights flickered once like a blink. The hooded figure reached into the laptop bag and pulled out a sheet of paper. It held it up to the hallway camera so the audience could read it. Even through the grainy feed, I could make out the words in thick black marker, accept. Then the figure tilted its head toward my peephole, as if it knew exactly where my eye would be, and it pressed a single finger to the center of the paper, tapping twice, in the same deliberate rhythm as every delivery. My tablet chat erupted into one unified command. Thousands of strangers pretending they had power, because their words moved faster than my fear. Open the door. The calm voice spoke softly through the laptop speakers in my kitchen, as intimate as someone standing behind my shoulder. This is the part where your story stops being about boxes, he said. This is the part where you decide whether you're the buyer or the product. The paper in the hooded figure's hand said, accept, and my tablet chat screamed like a stadium because strangers love moments that don't belong to them. I didn't open the door. I backed away from it, slow palms up, like the apartment might accuse me of something, and I watched the laptop feed instead, because the feed felt safer than the peephole, safer than the crack under the door where cold air kept slipping. Through like a tongue, the hallway camera showed the figure standing perfectly still, then tilting its head as if listening to the silence inside my place. The calm voice in my kitchen didn't raise volume, didn't threaten with drama, it just said, "You're hesitating because you think you're still the customer." The burner phone lit again with audience, and the ringtone tried to turn my panic into entertainment. I didn't answer. The call stopped by itself, and a new window popped up on the newer laptop, last chance to choose. The cursor hovered over accept again without clicking. The hallway feed didn't change, but I noticed something I hadn't before. The hooded figure's gloved fingers were holding the paper at the exact height and angle you'd hold. Something up for a camera to read, not for a person. It wasn't asking me. It was asking the ceiling. That thought made my stomach twist. I reached for the tablet and swiped the chat away, tried to close it, tried to shut the audience out, but the interface snapped back like it had teeth. A message pinned itself at the top in clean white text. Don't look away. Then the hallway feed glitched once, a brief burst of static that looked like snow on an old TV, and when it cleared, the hooded figure was gone. The laptop bag was still on my doormat in the feed, unzipped, empty. I held my breath, waiting for footsteps, waiting for the elevator ding, waiting for anything that proved it had left in a normal human way. Nothing. My apartment felt too warm, as if the heat had been turned up to keep me comfortable while I was being watched. The calm voice said, "Check your mail." "No," I whispered, because refusing instructions was the only form of dignity left. The voice didn't argue. My own front door lock clicked once softly, like someone testing it from the outside. The deadbolt didn't turn. It just clicked a reminder. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. "You can't ignore what's yours." Then another, "It's already inside." I scanned my kitchen without moving my feet, eyes darting to corners, to the shadow under the couch, to the gap under my bedroom door. My closet door was slightly ajar now, though I was sure I'd left it closed after the smoke detector. A thin black strand lay across the threshold, like a tripwire, glossy and wrong. I didn't go near it. I went to the living room and pulled the couch away from the wall with shaking hands, because I remembered the way the figure had reached under my bed in those sleep clips, how it treated hidden spaces like drawers. Behind the couch on the floor was a shoebox-sized package wrapped in brown paper and tied with white string in a neat bow, the kind of old-fashioned wrapping that should have felt harmless. It didn't. The paper smelled faintly of wintergreen, that cheap, nostalgic scent you get in old drawers and antique shops. My throat tightened before I even touched it, because my brain recognized the smell long before my adult logic caught up. I untied the string and peeled the paper back, and a bright childish color flashed in the dim light. A toy. A plush rabbit. Small, worn one ear permanently bent. The fabric faded from too many washes. The stitching on its belly repaired with a different thread because someone once tried to fix it with what they had. I couldn't breathe. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. It went missing when I was 8. The winter. My family moved from a smaller place to a bigger one. The winter. The pipes froze, and my dad got angry, and my mom told me to stop crying because crying made everything worse. I remember the exact day I lost it, because I'd hidden it under my pillow like it was a secret friend, and the next morning it was gone, and I spent weeks searching closets and boxes while my parents argued about money and heat and whether we should have moved at all. I had convinced myself. I'd invented the rabbit like kids invent comfort when they don't have any. But there it was in my apartment, behind my couch, wrapped like a gift. My hands shook so badly, the plush trembled in my grip. Tucked under its bent ear was a small tag that wasn't there when I was a kid. A laminated card, threaded through the seam like an ID badge, and on it, in clean typed letters, "Return to owner." Beneath that condition, used. Beneath that, time of recovery, 0213. My stomach dropped. The calm voice didn't speak for a moment, letting the silence do the work. Then it said, "You remember how it felt to lose something and never know where it went?" "How did you get this?" I whispered. "Same way you got everything," the voice replied. "Delivered." The plush rabbit's belly felt heavier than it should, like the boots had, like it held something inside. I pressed gently and felt a hard rectangle under the stuffing. Plastic. A small device. The rabbit wasn't just a memory. It was a container. I ripped a seam open, with my thumbnail stuffing spilling out like cotton snow, and pulled out a tiny black module, no bigger than a matchbox, with a single red light. A tracker, or a recorder, or both. The red light blinked, steady, patient. My tablet pinged, and the livestream chat flooded with a new type of excitement. Not hunger this time, but delight, like they loved the intimacy of it. Childhood arc. He's cracking. Show the toy. Show the stitching. My skin crawled at the thought that strangers were now watching my 8-year-old grief like it was an episode twist. I grabbed the rabbit and the module and marched to the kitchen sink, turned the water on full blast, and shoved the module under the stream. The red light didn't flicker. It blinked through the water like an eye underwater. I slammed it against the sink basin. The plastic cracked. The light kept blinking. I threw it into a glass and filled the glass with water until it overflowed. The light kept blinking. The calm voice sighed gently. "Violence doesn't help," it said. "That's something you learned early, isn't it?" The words hit too close, too personal, and my anger rose hot enough to make my vision sharpen. "Stop talking like you know me," I snapped. The voice answered softly. "You bought a box that promised it would know you." The plush rabbit in my hand suddenly vibrated, not like a phone, but like something humming to life. Then, from inside the ripped seam, a tiny speaker crackled, and a child's voice played muffled at first, then clearer. It was my voice. 8 years old. I heard myself whispering into fabric the way kids whisper to toys, because toys are safe. "Don't leave," little me said. "Please don't leave." My knees went weak. I hadn't remembered saying that. I hadn't remembered recording anything. But the audio was real, down to the little wet click in my throat when I tried not to cry. The calm voice spoke over it, low and calm like a narrator stepping into a scene. "That's what you sound like when you can't control the loss," it said. "Now listen to what you sound like when you can." The toy crackled again, and the audio changed. Adult me, breathing hard in my kitchen earlier tonight the moment I saw the contract board with my name. "This isn't real," my voice said on the recording, thin and desperate. The calm voice murmured, "Same sentence. Different age." The tablet chat went insane. The viewer count jumped. My throat closed. I stumbled backward until my back hit the refrigerator, clutching the rabbit like it could anchor me. My apartment lights flickered once, and my newer laptop screen changed again to a single button centered on black ACCEPT, delivery. Below it was a smaller line, confirm ownership. The calm voice said, "You don't get rid of what's yours. You accept it." I stared at the button, then at the rabbit, then at the blinking red light underwater in the glass, like a tiny heartbeat that refused to die. My phone buzzed with another text. "You always come back for it." And beneath that, "Open the door." From the hallway I heard 2 slow taps against my door, the same deliberate rhythm as every box, every instruction, every proof. My stove clock blinked and reset itself to 2:12, the minute before the trap. The rabbit's tiny speaker crackled once more, and little me whispered again closer, this time as if the toy were pressed to my ear. "Don't leave." The calm voice spoke almost tender. "So don't," it said. "Stay. Open. Accept." And in the silence between my breath and the next forced minute, I realized the toy wasn't just returned to me. It was reminding me that I had been trainable my entire life. Polaroids are supposed to feel warm, like a relic from a time when photographs were physical proof you could hold in your hand. That's why the next delivery made me feel sicker than blood-stained fabric ever did. I didn't open my door, but the door didn't matter anymore. The building had already demonstrated it could put things where it wanted. My stove clock flickered from 2:12 to 2:12 again, like it was stuck on purpose, and the calm voice in my speakers went quiet, as if giving the room space for what it knew would hurt more. I stood in my kitchen with the plush rabbit in one hand, scene-torn stuffing spilling my childhood voice still echoing in my head, and the tablet chat humming like a crowd, waiting for the next scene. Then my mail slot clinked. I don't even have a mail slot. My door doesn't. But I heard the sound anyway, that thin metallic clink of something pushed through a narrow opening, and a second later, a stack of small, glossy squares slid across my hardwood floor and fanned out near my feet like playing cards. My stomach turned. I crouched slowly and picked up the top one with shaking fingers. It was a Polaroid. White border, Slight chemical gloss. The photo showed my front door from the hallway ceiling. Angle perfectly centered my doormat. Centered my peephole, a small black dot. In the corner, written in thick marker, was a date. Yesterday. And beneath it, a time 0213. I flipped to the next Polaroid. Same angle, same door, but the lighting was different, as if the hallway lights had flickered or someone had adjusted exposure. This time the doormat was empty, but there was a thin black hair curled into a loop, placed exactly in the middle, like a signature. I flipped again. A box on the mat, the snowflake logo visible. Another flip. The hooded figure, standing there head bowed, hands clasped in front like a patient delivery man. Another flip. The hooded figure closer to the camera face, still hidden but the scarf visible now glossy black, strands woven through it like thread, catching the whole light in thin, wet lines. The next photo made my throat close. The hooded figure was holding up a Polaroid to the ceiling camera, showing a Polaroid of my door, a Polaroid inside, a Polaroid like a recursion. In the white border of that photo, someone had written proof of viewership. My hands went numb. The tablet chat started to scroll faster, without my touching it, as if the audience recognized the artifact and got excited by the physicality of it. Polaroids are classic. He's done. Look at his hands. Count them. There are more. I forced myself to keep flipping because stopping felt like giving the pictures power. Each Polaroid was a step closer, a day-by-day escalation. One showed the hallway at 213, with the lights off, only the camera's flash reflecting off the elevator doors, like eyes. One showed a close-up of my peephole, with a dark oval in the center that could have been a fingertip pressed against it from outside. One showed my door slightly open, chain taut, the same moment from earlier tonight, except the angle was different, as if there were multiple cameras. Then there was a Polaroid, taken from inside my apartment. My kitchen, overhead angle. Me standing at my counter holding the tablet, face pale, shoulders hunched. The picture was from earlier tonight, and the fact that it existed in my hand meant someone had been in my apartment with a Polaroid camera while I was in my apartment, and had developed the film somewhere nearby, and had slid it through a non-existent slot like a magic trick. I dropped that one, like it burned. My breath came too fast. The plush rabbit's bent ear brushed my wrist and I almost screamed. The calm voice finally spoke quiet and precise. You like evidence, so we gave you a format you can't delete. My eyes stung. How are you printing these? I whispered, because my brain was still begging for logistics, as if logistics would make it less impossible. The voice answered. You don't need a printer for Polaroids. You need proximity. The word proximity landed like a hand around my throat. I gathered the photos and counted them with shaking fingers. 12. A neat number, like a curated set. The last one at the bottom was face down. I didn't want to flip it. I knew the last one would be the punchline. The tablet chat seemed to anticipate it, messages stacking into a single pressure flip IT. Flip it. Don't flip it. When I finally turned it over, my stomach dropped so hard, I felt lightheaded. It was my kitchen again. Same overhead angle, but the framing was tighter, as if the camera had leaned in. I was in the photo, yes, but not the way I expected. I was kneeling on the floor, gathering Polaroids, with my hands exactly as I was doing now. My face was turned slightly toward the lens, eyes wide, jaw clenched. The plush rabbit was visible, near my knee torn open, stuffing spilled like snow. In the background, reflected faintly in the dark glass of my microwave door, a hooded figure stood behind me, close enough that its shadow touched my shoulders. The white border of the Polaroid had fresh marker on it, glossy, and not fully dried. 2 words right now. Under that, in smaller letters, smile. My mouth went dry. I turned in a jerky half-circle flashlight beam, sweeping the kitchen, catching nothing but cabinets and corners, and my own shaking shadow. The tablet chat screamed in text, and the viewer count ticked upward, like it fed on my realization. My newer laptop made a soft notification sound, and when I looked, the screen showed the contract board again, but my listing had changed. Status: in progress. Under it, a new line had been added. Subject has received personal effects. Subject is ready for key delivery. The calm voice said, Polaroids prove you were watched. The toy proves you were known. The next thing proves access. I clutched the stack of photos until the edges cut into my palm. "Get out of my apartment," I said, but it came out as air not authority. The voice replied, "Then stop inviting us in." The stove clock blinked and reset to 212 again, like the night refused to move forward until I complied. The plush rabbit speaker crackled once more, and my 8-year-old voice whispered, "Please don't leave." But this time layered under it was another voice, thin and excited, almost laughing. He thinks he's alone. The sound came not only from the toy, but from somewhere in my kitchen, just slightly delayed, like an echo in the wrong direction. I froze, and in the silence I heard something tiny and precise, the soft click of a Polaroid camera shutter, close enough that I could smell the faint chemical sweetness of developing film in the air. A new square slid across my floor from the direction of my hallway, stopping at my feet with perfect gentleness. I didn't want to pick it up. I did. Anyway, the photo was blank at first, milky gray. Then an image began to appear slowly, like a bruise forming. My front door from inside this time chain gone, deadbolt hanging open. And on the floor, just inside the threshold, centered, like a gift, was a small brass key. In the white border, the marker was already there, thick and confident. IT fits. The brass key in the Polaroid looked ordinary, in the way ordinary things become terrifying once they're presented as proof. It lay on my floor in the photo, centered just inside my threshold, like a coin you're supposed to pick up for luck. Except the caption said, "It fits," and the ink still looked wet. I stared at my real floor, half expecting the key to be there too, and then I heard it, a soft metallic tick against hard wood, gentle as a fingernail tap. I looked down and my stomach turned cold. The key was real, sitting 2 inches from my bare toes, bright brass against the brown wood, as if it had always belonged there, and I'd only now learned how to see it. My tablet chat erupted with the kind of glee that made me hate humanity in a new personal way, and the viewer count jumped as if the audience could smell access the way animals smell blood. My newer laptop screen refreshed on its own, the contract board briefly visible again with my listing marked "In Progress." Then it snapped to a single line of instruction in stark white text, the key. The calm voice didn't speak. It didn't need to. The key's presence was the message doors were no longer mine. I picked it up, with 2 fingers, like it might be hot. It was cold, colder than my apartment air, as if it had been sitting outside in snow. The teeth were unfamiliar, not like the keys I carried every day. It had an old-fashioned cut deeper grooves, the kind of key you'd imagine on a heavy lock. I held it up to the light and saw a tiny snowflake etched near the bow, subtle but deliberate, like a signature you can't scrub off. My first impulse was to throw it into the sink, into the garbage disposal, into anything that would grind it down and make this feel less inevitable. I walked to the sink, opened my palm over the drain, and my burner phone rang once with audience. I didn't answer, but the call was enough to make my hand freeze. On the tablet, the chat split into 2 camps in a frenzy. Do it, drop it, versus don't you dare. My stomach tightened because I suddenly understood the game wasn't just boxes. It was training. Every decision I made became a clip, a proof, a behavior pattern someone could annotate. I set the key on the counter instead of destroying it, and the moment I did, the kitchen light flickered like a satisfied blink. My real phone still powered off, buzzed anyway, with a text that appeared on the black screen as if the device itself had been compromised. Back door. I didn't have a back door, not in the way houses do, but my building had a rear exit down the hall, the one tenants used to take trash out to the bins in the alley. The phrase hit me with immediate dread, because back door also meant vulnerability, an entry you forget to guard because you don't think anyone would choose it. The calm voice finally spoke, but not through a call. It came through my laptop speakers as if my apartment had become a set with built-in audio. Front doors are for guests, he said. Back doors are for people who don't want to be seen. My throat went dry. What do you want? I whispered, because my voice felt like the last private thing I owned. I want you to stop pretending locks matter, he replied. Go. No. The stove clock blinked and reset to 2, 1, 2, again that same pre-trap minute, and the key felt heavier in my pocket, like it had gained gravity. I didn't put on shoes. I just shoved my feet into boots and grabbed my coat and the tablet, because the chat was already chanting go, go, go like a crowd pushing me toward a stage. In the hallway, the air smelled faintly of wet wool again, and that scent made my skin crawl because it always arrived before proof. The corridor was empty, but my building felt occupied, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. I walked fast, not running, because running would make me feel like prey, and I was done giving them that. At the back stairwell door, the metal handle was cold enough to sting. There was a deadbolt there, one I'd never needed to think about because it was always opened with a shared building key I didn't have. I stared at the lock, then at the brass key in my palm, and my chest tightened with a horrible certainty. My tablet chat was breathless. Fits, fits, fits. I slid the key into the lock. It went in smoothly, like it belonged. My fingers shook as I turned it. The bolt retracted with a soft, perfect click. Not a struggle, not a scrape. A sound so clean, it felt rehearsed. The door eased inward on its own, and a draft of winter air hit my face, carrying the smell of snow and exhaust, and something metallic underneath, like pennies warmed in a fist. The back stairwell was dark. My flashlight beam swept down the steps, and caught a thin black strand stretched across the railing, like a line of fishing wire, glossy, deliberate, tied in a neat knot. I swallowed hard and stepped over it anyway. My phone buzzed again with a message. You used it. On the tablet, the chat erupted into praise and cruelty. He can't help himself, like they were watching an addict relapse. I went down the steps into the alley exit, hand tight on the rail breath, visible heart hammering. At the bottom was the rear door to outside. Another lock. Another deadbolt. Another place I'd never imagined someone would bother. The brass key slid in again without resistance, and the moment it turned, I heard a faint click from above my head, like a camera shutter in the dark. I froze. The tablet pinged and a new image flashed briefly on the screen. A Polaroid of me in the stairwell, taken from the landing above my face, turned up mid-freeze eyes, wide key in hand. The white border was already labeled Access, confirmed. The photo vanished, and the chat went insane. I forced the rear door open and stepped into the alley. Snow drifted against dumpsters. A single streetlight buzzed weakly at the far end, casting long shadows that made every shape look like a person waiting. My breath came sharp and fast. The cold air tasted clean, compared to my apartment, but the relief didn't last, because I saw something that made my stomach drop. Footprints. Fresh, deep footprints in the snow leading from the alley mouth to the rear door had just opened. Barefoot prints. Wide toes, the same kind I'd seen in the woods. And again, no prints, leading away. My tablet chat screamed at once, "Behind you!" I didn't turn. I forced myself to look at the rear door, instead at the lock at the brass key still in it, and I realized the truth that had been waiting underneath every delivery. The key wasn't for my building. My building was for the key. The calm voice spoke softly through my tablet speaker, now close and amused. "Good," he said. "Now you understand what it means when we say, 'from you.' If it fits your back door, it's because you were always supposed to open it." My fingers went numb around the key. I yanked it out, and the door swung shut behind me with a heavy finality. I tried the handle. Locked. My breath caught. I tried again. Locked. The brass key in my palm suddenly vibrated once, like a phone receiving a notification, and the tablet displayed a single line of text. "You're outside. Now check your pocket." I stared down, terrified to obey, but my hand moved anyway, slipping into my coat pocket. My fingers touched paper, brittle and cold. I pulled it out and my stomach sank. A folded newspaper, old yellowed ink-smelling, creased like it had been saved for decades. On the front page in bold was a date 1995. And over the headline someone had written in thick marker, WRAP, it like a gift. The streetlight buzzed overhead, and somewhere in the snow behind the dumpsters, I heard a soft rustle like fabric, shifting patient in clothes. Old newspaper has a smell that punches straight through time, ink and dust and basement air. The scent of something kept in a box you weren't supposed to open. The folded 1,995 paper in my hands felt damp at the edges, like it had been pressed into snow and then dried again, and the headline beneath the marker bled through in places where the ink had aged. My fingers shook as I unfolded it under the weak alley light, and the paper crackled loud in the winter silence, a brittle sound that made me feel like I was breaking rules just by touching it. My tablet chat went eerily quiet for a second, as if even the audience recognized the significance of an artifact that wasn't digital. Then the messages returned in a rush. What's the headline? Read it. Read it. The top story was local, the kind of newspaper my parents used to leave on the kitchen table when I was a kid, and seeing the masthead made my throat tighten because it felt too specific to be random. Across the front page was a photo of my building, except it didn't look like my building. Same structure, same outline, but the facade was older, the entrance canopy different, the windows framed in a style that made it feel like a cheaper place, a place with fewer safety codes and more secrets. The headline read something like, "Winter storm strands tenants as power fails," and under it was a smaller subhead that made my stomach drop. Police investigate disturbance in basement utility room. I stared at that line until the words blurred. My building. In 1995. The basement room. The chair. The live stream. Proximity. My breath fogged the paper and the ink smelled sharper, as if the story wanted to be read. I scanned down and found a paragraph about a tenant complaining of noises at night, scratching and tapping, and another line about a resident found disoriented near the rear exit, unable to explain how the lock had opened when the building. Master key was missing. The words made my skin prickle because they sounded like me without my name. My burner phone buzzed in my pocket like a heartbeat. I ignored it. The calm voice didn't need to call. It could speak through whatever device was nearest. The tablet displayed a single instruction in white text over the chat. Bring it in. The rear door behind me was still locked, and the brass key felt cold in my palm, but the panic in my chest made me try anyway. I shoved the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, and the door opened as if it had been waiting for my decision. That was the worst part, the way it cooperated. I stepped back into the stairwell and the door shut behind me, with a heavy thunk sealing out the alley and sealing me back into the building's breath. The air smelled faintly of wet wool again, as if the building exhaled and I was inside its lungs. Halfway up the stairs, my tablet chimed, and the live stream returned. Full force viewer count, climbing chat, chanting, "Rap IT, Rap IT," and a new pinned message appeared at the top, "Gift, time." My stomach tightened because I recognized the phrasing from the marker, "Wrap it like a gift." This wasn't an object, it was a role. I reached my floor and the hallway lights flickered once, then steadied, and my apartment door stood there, looking normal, freshly repaired chain latch, and all like a set that resets between takes. I unlocked it and stepped inside, and the first thing I noticed was the smell, paper, and old ink inside my apartment, now stronger than what I'd carried, as if more had arrived while I was out. On my kitchen table was a neat stack of additional newspaper pages, all yellowed, all dated 1995, spread like wrapping paper. In the center of them sat a small box, shoebox-sized, tied with white string in a perfect bow. The snowflake logo was stamped on the lid in faint gray ink, subtle enough you might miss it if you weren't looking for it. My throat went dry. I hadn't opened my door for this delivery. It had still found my table. The calm voice spoke softly through my laptop speakers, like a host introducing the next item. "People used to wrap things in what they read," he said. "It makes the gift feel innocent." I stared at the bow. "What is it?" I whispered. "Something old," he replied. "Something that explains why the time is 213. My tablet chat surged, hungry again, and I realized they weren't just watching me. They were waiting for me to make the object real by touching it. I pulled on the string. The bow came undone too easily, like it was designed for smooth unwrapping on camera. I lifted the lid. Inside was another layer of 1995 paper, folded precisely around the contents, and beneath that paper was a smaller package, wrapped more tightly, the edges crisp as if someone had practiced. My fingers trembled as I peeled it back, and a cold chemical smell rose up, faint but sharp, like formaldehyde or old plastic. Under the paper was a cassette tape, the kind I hadn't seen in years, black plastic with a handwritten label in blue ink. The handwriting wasn't blocky, like the marker. It was neat, careful, almost feminine. The label read, Night, Log 0213. Under that, a date, DEC, 1995. My stomach lurched. I don't have a cassette player, I said, and the sentence sounded pathetic even to me, like refusing a gun because you don't own bullets. The calm voice answered immediately. You do now. The newer laptop on my table made a soft mechanical sound, and a small tray slid out from its side that hadn't been there before. Not a CD drive. Something older. A cassette deck, built into the sleek laptop casing like a joke that shouldn't exist. The tray waited open like a mouth. My tablet chat went feral. Play it, play it, play it. I didn't move. My legs felt weak. The calm voice softened, coaxing. This is history, he said. You like history. You've been collecting it in boxes. I swallowed, tasting metal. My hand moved anyway, because my body had learned compliance. In small increments, open the flap, pick up the key, go to the woods, press play. I slid the cassette into the tray. It clicked into place, with a dull finality. The laptop screen changed to a minimal interface, playback required. Beneath it, 0213. Only. My stove clock blinked and reset to 212, again that same trapped minute. And my heart hammered because I understood the pattern. The night would not advance until I fed it what it wanted. I tried to eject the tape. The button did nothing. The tray stayed shut. The calm voice murmured, Don't waste time. It's almost your minute. The lights in my apartment dimmed slightly, not fully, just enough to make the corners feel deeper. The wet wool smell strengthened, as if someone had stepped closer. My tablet chat pinned a new line at the top. Simple and cruel, don't look behind you when it plays. The stove clock flipped to 213 by itself, and the laptop interface lit up with one bright button, play. I pressed it because my finger moved before my courage could stop it. The cassette motor whirred a soft mechanical sound that dragged my stomach into a knot because it felt like summoning an error. Then audio poured from the speakers. Grainy, muffled, unmistakably real. Wind. A building. Creaking. A radiator clicking in that same rhythm. I'd heard through phone calls and recordings, only this time it sounded older, harsher, as if the pipes were struggling in a storm. A voice spoke close to the microphone, whispering like someone hiding in a closet. It was not the calm voice. It was a different voice, younger, frightened, and the words made my skin go cold. If anyone finds this, don't open the back door. At 213. The tape hissed. Another voice, farther away, replied thin and excited, almost laughing, he'll open it. They always do. The sound of a key turning came through the speakers, followed by 2 slow taps on wood, the same deliberate rhythm that had followed me all week. My apartment lights flickered in sync. I froze, every muscle locked, because the tape wasn't just a recording anymore. It was a script, and my building was performing it perfectly. The cassette hissed again, and the frightened voice whispered, It fits like a confession, and then a sharp Polaroid camera shutter snapped in the audio so close I felt it in my teeth. At the same instant, in my real kitchen, right behind my shoulder, a Polaroid camera shutter clicked, for real crisp and immediate, and a warm breath touched the back of my neck through my collar, like someone leaning in to watch history repeat. The breath at the back of my neck didn't feel cold. That's what made it unbearable. Winter air has a bite, a clean edge. This was warm, damp, intimate, like someone had leaned in so close their lungs had permission to touch my skin. I didn't turn because the tablet chat had trained my body to fear the consequences of looking, and because the cassette was still playing that grainy 1995 hiss, filling my kitchen like the building's memory had been poured into the crite. Speakers. The frightened voice on tape whispered again. Don't open the back door, and somewhere under the hiss I heard the same 2 slow taps, the delivery rhythm, as if the recording was teaching my walls how to knock. My apartment lights flickered in time. The calm voice, my calm voice, the one that had been narrating my collapse all week, didn't speak. It let the tape do it. Let history run me like a groove in plastic. My hands were frozen on the edge of the counter, and my eyes locked on the laptop screen because it was easier to stare at instructions than to acknowledge a person might be behind me. The cassette motor whirred steadily. Then the audio shifted. The radiator clicking got louder, closer, like the microphone had been moved into the utility room. A different sound joined the heavy slosh of liquid in a glass container, carried carefully set down with reverence. A voice on the tape, not frightened now, but flat and tired, said, "It preserves in the cold." Then the thin, excited voice answered, delighted, "Winter is the best lab." My stomach tightened. In the real room, right beside my elbow, glass kissed wood with a soft clink. I felt the vibration through the counter before I saw anything. I kept my head forward, moving only my eyes, and in the corner of my vision, I saw it a mason jar on my countertop that hadn't been there a second ago. Clear glass, beaded with condensation, as if it had been carried in from outside. Inside was something white and granular packed to the shoulder like snow, except snow doesn't settle into perfect layers and snow doesn't look slightly oily at the edges where it meets glass. The lid was screwed on tight, metal rim sealed with a strip of black tape stamped with the snowflake logo. My tablet chimed, and the live stream chat surged instantly, viewer count spiking as if the audience had been waiting for this specific object. Jar, 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 open. Smell it. A new pinned message appeared at the top of my tablet, winter sample. The calm voice finally spoke through my speakers, close and composed, like he was standing in my kitchen reading over my shoulder. "Do you know what formaldehyde smells like?" he asked. I didn't answer. My throat wouldn't let me. He continued anyway, gentle, in a way that felt cruel. High school biology. Dissection day. A clean room, trying to hide what it's doing. The words hit before the smell did, because suggestion is its own kind of contamination, and then my nose caught it. A sharp chemical sweetness, leaking from somewhere near the lid, not strong enough to burn, just enough to trigger a memory of dead frogs in rubber gloves. My stomach lurched. I backed away from the counter, and the jar sat there like it didn't care. The cassette tape hissed, and in the audio I heard a jar lid turning a wet pop as a seal broke, then a soft sigh from someone inhaling. In my real kitchen, the jar lid did not move. It didn't need to. The tape was a rehearsal, and a fret at the same time. My burner phone vibrated in my pocket with a text I could feel more than read. When I pulled it out, the screen displayed 2 words, "Shake it." My hands shook already. The audience loved that. The chat, filled with laughter, spelled out in jagged characters, and I hated them for being alive, while I felt like a specimen. "What is it?" I whispered, and my voice sounded small against all the devices. The calm voice answered snow, he said, and paused just long enough to let the lie settle. "Collected." The cassette played the frightened voice again, quieter now, as if it was fading. "If you see the jar, don't open it." The excited voice laughed softly. "He always opens." The laptop interface changed on its own to a single line, in stark white confirm contents. Beneath it, a timer appeared counting down from 60, and I understood the trick. Urgency makes obedience feel like choice. I approached the jar with a dish towel again, because towels were my last superstition. Up close, the snow inside wasn't uniform. Tiny, darker flecks were suspended through it, little threads and grains that didn't belong in ice. I pressed my finger to the glass, and felt cold. Real cold, like the jar had been packed against a block of winter. The tape on the lid had a small handwritten label, this time neat blue ink, like the cassette, sample 15. My stomach rolled. I should have thrown it. I should have smashed it. But I could still see that blinking tracker light in a glass of water that refused to die, and I knew destruction was just another clip. I twisted the lid. It resisted. then gave with a sticky squeak. The moment the seal broke, the smell punched out harder, sweet and dead, and underneath it another odor rose, faint but unmistakable, hair-wet wool, skin. I gagged eyes, watering. The audience screamed in chat, thrilled by my reaction. Inside the jar, the snow shifted slightly, settling as air entered, and for the first time I saw what the flecks really were. Tiny pale curls like shavings, mixed with thin dark strands that looked too long to be dirt. My flashlight beam caught one strand pressed against the glass glossy black, and my stomach dropped because I recognized that shine. Hair. Long hair threaded through the white like a weave. The calm voice murmured, "Winter keeps things from rotting. Winter keeps stories intact." I lifted the jar and tipped it, watching the surface slide. The snow didn't tumble like powder. It moved like wet granules, heavy clumping, and near the bottom something solid bumped against the glass with a dull knock. My heart stuttered. I tipped it again, and the solid thing rolled partly into view, a small pale shape smooth and curved, like a tooth or a knuckle. The audience chat went feral. Show it, turn it." My fingers went numb. I set the jar down too hard, and the contents sloshed in a way that proved there was liquid somewhere in there, soaked into the snow, making it more like a preservative pack than anything natural. The cassette tape hissed, and the audio changed again, now a different room tone, and the frightened voice spoke, one last clear sentence full of exhausted certainty. "If he smells it, he's already tagged." My blood went ice cold. "Tagged," I whispered. The calm voice answered immediately, soft and satisfied. "Scent is memory," he said. "Memory is tracking." My tablet screen flashed a system-like message over the chat DNA match found. The same phrase from the thumbnail concept, except now it wasn't marketing, it was instruction, and the audience count climbed, as if the word DNA was a bell rung for hungry dogs. The jar lid in my hand vibrated once, not physically possible, but it happened anyway. A tiny tremor that felt like the glass was alive. I stepped back, coughing against the chemical sweetness, and my eyes blurred with tears. When my vision cleared, the jar was still open, still leaking that lab-sweet death smell into my apartment. And beside it on my counter, where my hand had been, was a small paper tag, like something tied to evidence bags, printed in clean font. Property return. Source. Basement archive. Desde minha noa sute no zech shichinj. Time 0213. Under that one line that made my stomach drop in a new way. Recipient you. My laptop speakers crackled, and the calm voice whispered almost affectionate. "You've been smelling the past all week. Now you've opened the part that doesn't wash off." In the hallway outside my apartment, 2 slow taps sounded on my door, deliberate and patient, and the jar on my counter answered with a soft internal knock as the solid object inside rolled against the glass, like something trying to get out. After the jar, my apartment never smelled neutral again. Even with the windows cracked, even with the fan running, that sweet chemical bite stayed in the air like a film over everything, and every breath felt like inhaling proof. I tried to close the jar, tried to seal it back in, but the lid wouldn't catch the threads of tape properly, and the smell kept leaking as if it wanted to be shared. The live stream chat didn't let me rest. It churned with demands and jokes and predictions, and the viewer count held steady like an eye that refused to blink. My stove clock blinked and reset to 212 again the minute before the trap, and I felt my nerves tighten because the night always forced itself to repeat until I complied. The calm voice stayed quiet for a long time, letting my own panic fill the space, and that silence felt like being watched by someone who knows you'll speak first. My burner phone buzzed with a single text: "Clean up." I didn't move toward the jar. I didn't dare. Instead, I grabbed a trash bag, lined it with another bag, then another, like layers could stop air. I slid the jar in and tied the knots tight. The smell still found me. It always found me. A soft clink came from the floor near my front door, and when I turned, there was something new. Lying on the hardwood just inside the threshold, a black ski mask folded neatly, the fabric matte and thick. the eye holes facing up like a blind. Stare. It hadn't been there a second ago. The fact that it could appear without ceremony made my stomach twist worse than any taped box. The tablet chat reacted instantly. Mask, mask, mask. A pinned message appeared. Winter face. My throat went dry. I didn't touch it. I stared at it, like it might crawl. The calm voice finally spoke through my speakers, composed as ever. You've been giving them your reactions, he said. Now give them your breathing. No, I whispered. You don't want it on you, he replied, almost conversational, because you know what it smells like. The words landed, and my brain supplied the memory before my nose did sweet solvent bitter edge, that sickly clean scent that doesn't belong outside hospitals. Chloroform. I'd only ever smelled it once in a demonstration video online, but the concept was enough. The idea of it made my tongue feel numb. The ski mask sat there, innocent in shape, violent in implication. The audience chat turned into a chant. Wear it, wear it. My hands shook. That's not funny, I said to the air, to the strangers, to the calm voice. He didn't laugh. It's not for humor, he said softly. It's for compliance. My real phone, still supposedly off, buzzed and lit its screen long enough to show a notification from my camera app. Motion detected 0213, and the timestamp on my stove clock blinked from 212 to 212 again like it was, stuck in the doorway of the next minute. I backed away from the mask, and as I did, my foot brushed something on the floor. Another Polaroid face down. I picked it up with trembling fingers and flipped it. The photo was my kitchen overhead angle, taken seconds ago. I was in it, leaning away from the ski mask, eyes wide, mouth open, mid-breath. In the white border, in thick marker, 2 words, too slow. Under that smaller, they like it when you fight. The image made me lightheaded because it meant someone was taking pictures in real time, again close enough to smell my fear. I swept the flashlight around my kitchen, catching nothing but cabinets and my own shaking shadow, and the mask stayed on the floor like it had patience. The calm voice said, "Pick it up." "I'm not putting it on," I said. "You don't have to put it on," he replied, and the subtle shift in his tone made my stomach drop because it sounded like a concession that wasn't. "Just hold it. Smell it. Confirm." My laptop screen changed to a simple checklist. Interface. Cold and clinical. Item 16 confirmation required. A checkbox next to smell verified sat empty. Below it another box, next to contact, verified. And beneath both a timer, counting down from 30. I stared at the timer, that artificial urgency, and felt the old training kick in, do the small thing to avoid the bigger thing. I approached the mask, with the dish towel again, as if I could distance myself from fabric. When I lifted it, it sagged slightly in my grip, heavier than it looked like it had absorbed something. The inside lining was damp. My throat tightened. The smell hit as soon as it was inches from my face, not overpowering but present, clean, sweet, with a bitter edge that made my sinuses flare. My eyes watered, instantly reflexive, as if my body recognized danger before my mind decided what to call it. The tablet chat erupted with delight at my reaction. My vision swam for a second, not full dizziness, just a slight tilt, and I panicked because even a hint of that effect meant the fabric had been primed with something real. I jerked the mask away and stumbled back coughing. The calm voice sighed, almost sympathetic. "See," he said, "you already know what it does." "Why are you doing this?" I rasped. "Because you keep proving you can be guided," he replied. "And because the next instruction requires you to move without being seen." My stomach turned. The checklist timer hit T. My laptop cursor moved by itself and checked, smell, verified, without my touching anything. The second it clicked, my apartment lights dimmed slightly, as if approval had been granted. My tablet screen flashed a new pinned message over the chat. "Face covered equals story continues." The audience roared. I hated that I could feel their hunger through a screen like the room had become an arena. I threw the mask onto the counter near the bag jar, then immediately regretted it, because it brought the smell closer, mixing chemical sweetness with that lab-preserved bite until my kitchen felt like a morgue trying to pretend it was. Clean. My breath came shallow. I grabbed the mask again, intending to stuff it into a bag, but my fingers brushed the inner lining and my skin tingled where it touched a faint numbness that made my throat close. I shook my hand, frantic. The numbness lingered like a suggestion. The calm voice lowered intimate. "Don't waste it," he said. "It's expensive." I stared at my fingertips, then at the mask, and nausea rose, because the word expensive made it feel transactional, like people were paying for my consciousness the way I had paid for boxes. The stove clock blinked and finally rolled forward to 2:13 with a soft electronic chirp, as if the night had decided the conditions were met. At that exact moment, my front door handle turned gently once, twice, as if someone was testing whether I'd locked it. It was locked. The handle stopped. 2 slow taps followed on the wood, the delivery rhythm. My tablet chat screened open. My legs went weak. The calm voice spoke softly, satisfied. "Now you see why the mask arrived," he said. "If you're going to open the door, you shouldn't let them see your face." "I'm not opening it," I whispered. "You already did," he replied, and my stomach dropped because he wasn't talking about the deadbolt. The ski mask in my hands tightened slightly, as if the fabric had memory, and for one impossible second it felt like it wanted to climb toward my face on its own. I flung it onto the floor, heart hammering, and the numbness in my fingertips pulsed once like a delayed aftertaste. My laptop speakers crackled, and the calm voice said, "You have 1 minute to decide whether you're the witness or the subject." The tablet chat pinned a final line in stark white, "Wear it tonight." And from the hallway outside my door I heard a soft, wet inhale, close to the peephole, followed by a whisper, so quiet it might have been my imagination, except it matched the thin, excited voice from the 1995 tape perfectly. "He's going to put it on." The ski mask lay on my floor like it had been waiting for my face all my life, and the numb tingle in my fingertips made every object feel slightly unreal, like my hands belonged to someone watching from above. The tablet kept the audience alive in my palm, their messages stacking into a single pressure that felt heavier than the mask itself. And the calm voice stayed quiet long enough for my own panic to fill the room like smoke. 2 slow taps came from the hallway, again deliberate, patient, the same rhythm as every delivery, and then the doorknob turned gently like a test, not an attempt, as if whoever stood outside knew I was locked and didn't care. My stove clock blinked and held at 2:12, that trapped minute, and the mask's chemical sweetness lingered in the air, even from where it lay, mixing with the jar's lab bite, until my kitchen smelled like something preserved, trying to pretend it was clean. My burner phone vibrated once, and displayed a single line, "Tonight." The laptop checklist interface replaced itself with one instruction, cold and simple: "We're this." I whispered no out loud, but the word felt thin like air pushed through a crack, and the tablet chat answered with a chant that wasn't even angry, just certain. "He's gonna do it." I told myself I could wait it out. I told myself I could sit on the floor and refuse to participate until morning. Then my front door deadbolt clicked open on its own, soft as a sigh, and the temperature in my apartment dropped enough for my skin to tighten, and I realized waiting was just another form of obedience if the house could move without me. The calm voice finally spoke through my speakers, low and composed. "You don't have to open the door," he said. "You just have to be ready when it opens." My throat went dry. The tablet feed flickered, and for a heartbeat showed, my hallway from the ceiling angle again. My door centered. My doormat centered the time overlay, reading 2:12, and then a sheet of paper slid under my door from the hall side with slow, careful fingers stopping perfectly in the strip of light. My stomach clenched. I didn't go to the door at first. I watched it like it might move on its own. The paper didn't. It waited. I used a hanger to hook it and drag it across the floor. The paper was thick like a note card, and the ink on it was bold black marker, still glossy at the edges, as if it had just been written. "Wear this tonight." Underneath, smaller, was a number 213. My blood went cold. Not a time. A unit number. My building had an apartment 213. I had never needed to know who lived there. The calm voice said almost gently, "You already know the rhythm. 2, 1, 3. The tablet chat exploded with joy at the neatness of it, as if the universe had just revealed a clever Easter egg. I backed up until my shoulder hit the refrigerator. "No," I said again, and this time it came out louder, more like anger. "I'm not doing errands." The calm voice replied, "It's not an errand. It's a delivery." My burner phone buzzed with a text that made my skin prickle. "Your turn." The numbness in my fingertips pulsed, and I realized with a sick clarity that the mask wasn't just an object. It was a permission slip. The smell on it wasn't strong enough to knock me out, not like in movies, but it was enough to make my brain feel slightly delayed, like my thoughts were arriving half a second after my body moved. That delay mattered. That delay was how you become someone you don't recognize on camera. I crouched, grabbed the mask with a towel, and held it up at arm's length. The inside lining was still damp. The chemical sweetness bloomed again, and my eyes watered reflexively. My laptop screen displayed a new line. Face covered equals access granted. Then beneath it, a second line. Delivery window now. I stared at my apartment door at the thin strip of hall light under it, and I hated myself for the bargaining that started. Immediately. "Just put it on for a second, just see what happens, just prove you can take it off." I pulled it over my head. The fabric hugged my cheeks and nose in a way that felt too familiar for something I'd never worn, and my breath instantly warmed the inside, making the air taste like fabric and chemicals. The world narrowed to 2 oval eye holes, and a mouth opening that made my own breathing sound louder, closer, private, in the worst way. The moment the mask settled, my tablet vibrated hard, and the chat pinned a new message. "Show us." The hallway camera feed appeared on the laptop, and my door was centered. And then, my own apartment door swung open inward without my hand touching it, slow and smooth, like someone else was opening it from the inside. I stood there in my kitchen, masked, staring at my open doorway like it was a mouth I'd been invited to step through. The hallway beyond was empty. No hooded figure, no gloved hand, just fluorescent light and still air. My burner phone rang once with audience, and stopped on its own as if the ring was only to make sure my heart jumped. The calm voice said, "Go to 213. Leave what they give you. Come back. Don't speak. Don't look at mirrors." The instruction about mirrors hit me like a slap because it implied I might see something I couldn't unsee, something I might recognize. I stepped into the hallway. The carpet muffled my boots. The building felt wrong at night, too quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. I walked toward the stairwell tablet in my left-hand burner phone, in my pocket mask warm and damp against my skin. Every few steps my vision swam slightly, not spinning, just a soft blur at the edges as if the world didn't want to stay sharp. I passed the security dome in the hallway ceiling, and felt an irrational urge to wave at it because the audience had trained my body to perform, even when I didn't want to. I didn't wave. I kept my head down and walked. At the stairwell, a new Polaroid lay on the landing face up, placed dead center like a marker in a scavenger hunt. It showed me in the hallway a second ago, already masked mid-step, and the white border read, "Good boy." My stomach lurched behind the fabric. I kept going. Floor 2 had different carpeting, darker, older, and the fluorescent lights buzzed louder, making the air feel thinner. Apartment numbers marched along the corridor. 207, 209, 211. 213 sat at the far end, near a window that looked out onto snow-dusted rooftops. The door to 213 was already cracked open just an inch, as if it had been waiting for my knock, but didn't require it. 2 slow taps came from inside the apartment, not on the door, but on something wooden. The delivery rhythm echoed from within like a heartbeat. My throat tightened. The calm voice didn't speak. The tablet chat did dozens of messages at once, telling me to push it, to run, to listen, to stay quiet. I pushed the door open with 2 fingers. The apartment was dark, except for a dim glow from a television screen in the living room, the kind of late-night blue light that makes faces look dead, even when they're not. The air smelled faintly of damp wool and stale heat. In the center of the entryway was a small cardboard box, stamped with the snowflake logo already open, its flaps spread like hands. Inside was a single padded envelope with a printed label. I didn't have to lean close to read it. The label was large, clean, unmistakable. To apartment 213. From you. My name. My address. Perfect formatting. My stomach dropped. The calm voice finally murmured through my earbudless air, as if it lived inside the mask. Now you understand, he said. It's always been from you. I picked up the envelope with shaking fingers and stepped fully into 213. The television glow flickered, and for a split second I thought I saw movement deeper in the apartment. A shadow shifting behind a doorway. Someone standing still enough to blend into the dark. I forced myself not to look. I moved, like a machine, following the instruction, leave what they give you. The envelope felt warm not from my hands, but like it had been carried against a body. I crossed the living room and saw the TV was showing the same minimalist dark interface as my newer laptop. Except this screen had one live camera feed to my own masked face in apartment 213, filmed from somewhere above the bookshelf. Viewer count, in the corner 312. The chat was there too, screening my movements in real time. I felt a wave of nausea so sharp my knees nearly buckled. I set the envelope on a coffee table and backed away, trying not to breathe too hard, trying not to let the mask's damp lining make me lightheaded. As I stepped backward, my heel touched something on the floor, another envelope. This one was unsealed, waiting. I bent and picked it up, and inside was a folded sheet of paper, with a single sentence typed in clean font, "Return to your unit." Under it to Trenton. I looked up without meaning to and caught my reflection in the dark TV screen. The mask turned my face into a blank, and behind that blankness, my own eyes looked wrung, too calm, as if the chemical and the audience had smoothed the edges off my fear. I tore my gaze away and walked out. The door to 213 closed behind me with a soft click, and I realized I hadn't heard a single human sound inside that apartment, besides the taps. No footsteps, no breath, no voice, as if the entire unit existed only as a set for the delivery. In the hallway, my burner phone buzzed with one final text: "You did it." My apartment door was closed when I reached my floor, as if it had never opened itself. The chain latch was intact. The deadbolt was locked. Normal. I unlocked it anyway, stepped inside, and the moment I did, the mask's inside lining warmed sharply, and my vision blurred at the edges, and I stumbled, catching myself on the counter. The tablet chat screamed something I couldn't read because my eyes couldn't focus. I ripped the mask off my head and sucked in cold air like it was medicine. The chemical sweetness clung to my skin. My kitchen table was different now. A new stack of envelopes sat there neatly arranged, all printed labels, all addressed to different unit numbers in my building. And at the top of the stack was a postage receipt, the kind you get at a real counter, with today's date and one line circled in pen. Sender address yours. My throat closed. I hadn't been to the post office. I hadn't touched stamps. I hadn't stood at a counter. But the ink on the receipt was smudged in one corner, the way ink smudges when a hand has just signed. My hand. My signature was at the bottom, shaky but legible, and next to it a time printed cleanly, 0213. The calm voice whispered through my speakers, satisfied. "You wore it," he said. "No, you can't claim you didn't send it." I stared at my own signature on the postage receipt until my eyes hurt, because the human brain will do anything to avoid accepting a fact that unthreads identity. The ink looked real. The paper felt real. It had the slight grit of thermal receipts and the faint smell of plastic heat. It was dated today. It had my address as the sender, my unit number, my name, and the time stamped like a verdict, 0213. My first thought was drugs, the mask, the damp lining, the numbness in my fingertips, the soft blur at the edges of my vision. A chemical that didn't knock you out, but made you suggestible, compliant, forgetful, in the small gaps where decisions are made. My second thought was worse. Even if it was drugs, someone still moved my body through the world like a delivery route. I looked at the stack of envelopes on my table. Each one had a neat printed label and a return line that read, "From you." Different unit numbers. Different names I didn't recognize. Some had a small snowflake watermark in the corner, like a brand. My tablet chat was ecstatic, treating my panic like a plot twist, and the viewer count held steady, as if people had set alarms for this minute in my life. I tried to shut the tablet off. The screen went black for half a second, then snapped back on with a pinned message in clean white text. Sender verification complete. My burner phone rang once, with audience, and stopped. Then a text arrived from the unknown. Number, check your mailbox. I laughed once, a short, ugly sound, because it was absurd to have a mailbox be the next horror beat, but my body moved anyway. That was the worst proof of all. My legs obeyed before my dignity could. I grabbed my coat and stepped into the hallway, leaving the tablet behind on the counter, like abandoning an audience in a theater, and for a moment, the silence felt almost holy. Then the lights flickered once, and I felt the building's attention settle back on me. At the mailboxes downstairs, my box was already open door, hanging slightly ajar. I hadn't touched it. Inside was a small parcel wrapped in brown paper, with clear tape and actual postage stamps, the kind you buy at a grocery store, crookedly placed like a human hand did it in a hurry. My stomach turned because stamps meant someone had taken this out of the building to a real place where normal people stand in line and talk about weather. The return address, printed in the upper left corner, was mine. Not from you as a concept, my literal name and unit number, as the sender. I held the package and felt the paper cold from being outside, and I noticed something that made my throat tighten. There was a postmark, a real ink postmark over the stamps, smeared slightly at the edge. It wasn't a label. It wasn't a prop. It was the world agreeing this had happened. I carried it back upstairs like it might bite. In my kitchen, the envelopes were still stacked neatly, the receipts still waiting. The calm voice spoke quietly through my speakers as soon as I set the parcel down. "You wanted authenticity," he said. "So we use the system that delivers authenticity to everyone." My hands shook as I peeled the tape. Under the brown paper was a small white mailing box, and on it, in black marker, someone had written the same two words I'd seen on the napkin and the receipt and the Polaroids, like a chorus. "From you." Inside the box was a smaller box, and inside that was a sealed plastic evidence bag, like the kind police use with a white label strip across the top. On the label, typed cleanly, was my name again, but beneath it, in a field marked submitted, there was also my name. Recipient and submitter, identical. My stomach dropped. Inside the evidence bag was a single object, a key ring with one familiar key on it. My building key. The one I'd carried for years. And attached to the ring was a tiny metal tag stamped with numbers 213. My throat went dry. I hadn't lost my keys. They were in my pocket. I checked. They were there. I was holding duplicates. Copies. Proof that whoever was doing this could replicate access, the way people replicate documents. Beneath the evidence bag was a printed sheet of paper like a confirmation email printed out for someone who doesn't trust screens. It read, "Mailing, confirmation, sender verified, delivery type internal, time accepted, 0213. Then a line at the bottom, smaller, like a footnote, in-person signature captured. My signature again, this time clearer, as if my hand had been steadier. The letters slanted the way mine do. I felt sick. "I didn't go anywhere," I whispered. The calm voice replied, "Your memory isn't the record. The record is." The newer laptop on my table refreshed on its own and displayed a short video thumbnail. Title, Lobby Cam 0213. Before I could stop myself, the file opened and my kitchen filled with a grainy security camera view of my building lobby. The angle was high, looking down at the mail area and front entrance. The time overlay in the corner read 213. The lobby was empty for a second. Then the front door opened, and someone walked in wearing a winter coat and a black ski mask. The person moved with careful calm, not rushing like they'd done this before. They carried a small stack of envelopes. They walked to the mailboxes, opened one mine with a key, and slid a parcel inside. Then they turned slightly, and the lobby camera caught their eyes through the mask holes. reflecting light, like tiny wet coins. My stomach lurched so hard, I grabbed the counter. The masked figure on the video tilted their head up toward the lobby camera and raised one gloved hand, not waving wildly, just lifting it in the same slow, polite gesture the porch figure had used, like acknowledging an audience. Then the figure turned and walked out into the night. The video ended. I stood there shaking, staring at the frozen last frame because my brain kept trying to find a seam where it could declare it a fake. But the way the figure's shoulders sat, the way it favored the left leg slightly when stepping, the small habit of tucking the elbow in close, those were my unconscious patterns. The mask wasn't a disguise. It was permission to become the evidence. My burner phone buzzed with a text, "You did great." Another arrived immediately. "Next time, smile." I tried calling the police again. This time, the call connected. It rang once, twice. Then the line filled with my own voice, speaking in a flat tone, recorded cleanly. "Hi, yes, I'm fine." False alarm. I froze. The call ended. The calm voice spoke softly, almost kindly. "If it's from you," he said, "then every authority hears it as you. That's the genius. You can report it, all you want. You're the sender." I stared at the stack of envelopes on my table, each one a tiny act of harm waiting to be delivered, and the weight in my chest felt like wet concrete. "Why are you making me do this?" I rasped. The calm voice didn't answer with anger. He answered like a teacher, correcting a student. "We're not making you," he said. "We're documenting what you do when you want to keep living." My stove clock blinked and reset to 2:12 again the minute before the trap, and I realized with a sick clarity that the night was not moving forward. It was looping around that time like a needle stuck in a groove. The smell of the mask still clung to my skin, sweet and bitter, and when I inhaled, my thoughts felt half a beat slow again. The laptop screen changed to the contract board, and my listing was still there, but the status line had been updated. Roll courier. Under it, a new line flashed briefly like a notification. Package outbound. I looked at my front door. 2 slow taps came from the hallway, deliberate as ever. Not a knock asking entry. A knock announcing delivery. My mail slot clinked again even though I don't have one, and something slid across my floor with a soft whisper of paper. I didn't want to look. I looked anyway. It was another stamped parcel. Real stamps. Real postmark. My name as sender. My address as sender. And on the front, the recipient line was blank, waiting, like an empty form. The calm voice whispered through my speakers, satisfied. "See," he said, "it's easier this way. No mysteries. No dark web. No markets. Just you doing what you always do." My burner phone vibrated, with a final message that made my skin go cold. "Write the address." And beneath it, as if the building itself was finishing the sentence, 0213. The blank recipient line on the stamped parcel sat on my floor like an open mouth, waiting for my handwriting and the burner phone's message. "Write the address" felt less like a request and more like gravity. I tried to outsmart it the way you outsmart a nightmare. By changing the scene, I kicked the parcel under the table. I unplugged the newer laptop. I shoved the burner phone into the freezer. I turned my real phone fully off and wrapped it in a towel, like suffocating a sound. None of it mattered. My stove clock blinked and held at 2:12 the minute before the trap, and the air in my apartment kept that sweet, bitter chemical film, like everything had been sprayed with memory. The tablet, even when I set it face down, kept vibrating faintly against the counter as if the audience was still there, still leaning forward. Then I heard the soft scrape of cardboard on hardwood. I hadn't moved the parcel. I looked down, and it had slid out from under the table by itself, gliding into the center of my kitchen like it wanted better lighting. A new item lay beside it that hadn't been there a second ago. A small white envelope labeled in clean print, INK. My throat tightened. I didn't want to touch anything else. I touched it anyway, because the last 18 episodes of my life had taught my body that refusal only delays the next violation. Inside the envelope was a cheap ballpoint pen and a thin, clear plastic packet containing fine white powder, folded flat like sugar, stolen from a diner, except the packet was sealed with black tape stamped with the snowflake logo. A small printed label on the packet read, "Sealant." The calm voice spoke through my speakers, low and composed. "You can't send it without sealing it," he said. "And you can't claim you didn't handle it, if your skin remembers." My stomach dropped. "What is that?" I whispered. The voice didn't name it. "Winter keeps things dry," he replied. "Dry things travel better." The burner phone muffled from the freezer rang once, anyway, faint and cheerful, like a toy behind ice. The tablet screen lit, even though it was face down. The glow leaked around the edges, and I could hear the chat through the speaker, like distant insects. Do it write it. I picked up the pen with shaking fingers, and wrote a single random name on a scrap of junk mail, testing my hand like it was mine. The letters looked wrong, slanted like they were borrowed. My fingertips tingled again, that faint numbness from the mask's lining, and it made the pen feel slightly too heavy, slightly too slow. The stove clock flipped to 2:13 with a soft chirp, and the newer laptop unplugged, powered on by itself, screen filling with the contract board. My listing flashed Rolly Courier, and beneath it, a new prompt appeared. Address, required to continue. The cursor hovered over a blank field, like a patient predator. The calm voice said, almost kindly, "Just write any unit number, any name. They'll accept the delivery. Doesn't have to be personal." That was the lie, that it could be random. I stared at the packet labeled sealant, at the thin crease where it could be torn, and at the way my hands already looked like someone else's hands in overhead Polaroids. "If I don't," I said, voice cracking, "what happens?" The calm voice answered without drama. "Then the system finds a way," he said. "It always does. The only question is whether you want burns on paper, or burns on you." I hated that my mind understood the bargain before my pride could refuse. I pulled the stamped parcel onto the table, peeled back a corner of the mailing tape, and slid the label sheet out from under the plastic window. The recipient line was still blank, waiting. I wrote my building's street name first, slow, deliberate, trying to make the act feel less like a ritual. Then I wrote Unit 213 because the number had already been placed in my head like a hook. My hand trembled. The pen tip scraped. Ink bled slightly at the curves as if even the paper was sweating. My chest tightened. I didn't write a person's name. I wrote only occupant, like that would protect someone by keeping them faceless. The moment I finished, the burner phone stopped ringing in the freezer, and the apartment went unnaturally quiet, like it was satisfied. The calm voice said, "Seal it." I tore the black tape off the sealant packet with the edge of the pen, careful, trying not to spill anything. The packet felt lighter than it should, like it held air as much as powder. I angled it over the parcel's adhesive strip, intending to sprinkle just enough to satisfy the instruction, and then throw the rest away. My hands shook at the wrong moment. The packet slipped. The powder poured out in a soft white stream, too much, too fast, spilling onto my fingers, onto the table, onto the open edge of the parcel, like snow falling indoors. For half a second, nothing happened, and my brain tried to pretend it was just sugar. Then my fingertips lit up with pain so sharp it stole my breath, like I'd pressed them to a hot pan. I jerked my hand back, and the powder smeared across my skin in a chalky streak. The burning intensified, instantly deep and fast, as if the surface of my skin was being erased. "No, no," I gasped, stumbling toward the sink. The tablet speaker blared, with chat reactions thrilled, and the viewer count on the corner of the screen jumped like a heartbeat responding to panic. The calm voice stayed calm. "Don't rub it," he said. "That spreads it." "What is it?" I choked, and the question came out as a sob. "A reminder," he replied. I shoved my fingers under running water, and the pain flared brighter, a vicious sting that made my vision white at the edges. The powder clung in paste to my knuckles, and the skin beneath reddened instantly, turning angry and raw as if it couldn't decide whether to blister or split. I yanked my hand out and shook it, panicked, and droplets of water flicked across the table, turning the spilled powder into little wet clumps that smoked faintly in the light, not visible smoke, just a shimmer that made my stomach lurch. I grabbed a towel, pressed it to my fingers and hissed through my teeth. The towel stuck slightly to my skin like a bandage on a wound. "Help," I whispered. Not to the voice, not to the chat, but to the air, because the human instinct is to ask even when you know nobody will answer. My real phone buzzed in my pocket, despite being off. When I pulled it out, it displayed a notification banner on the black screen, as if the device itself had become a mouth. Contact verified. My stomach dropped. The newer laptop screen updated chemical hazard confirmed. Beneath it, in smaller text, as if it were a routine logistics update, compliance increased. The calm voice spoke softly, almost approving. "Now you understand the cost of a signature," he said. The pain in my fingers pulsed, not fading, not easing, but deepening into a hot throb that matched my heartbeat. I tried to peel the towel away and saw a thin layer of skin come with it, raw and shining. I gagged. Tears blurred my eyes. On the table the stamped parcel sat, sealed, now adhesive strip, dusted and pressed by the wet clumps and the recipient line. Unit 213 OCC Upapant looked brutally ordinary. A delivery. A simple act. My tablet chat pinned a new message in clean white text over the screaming comments. "Burn equals proof." My burner phone rang once from the freezer, again muffled, and then my own voice played through its speaker, as if it had been recorded earlier, flat and obedient. "It's okay. I'm fine. Just packaging." I stumbled back from the sink, clutching my hand to my chest, and the smell of chemicals rose stronger, now sharp and clean, mixing with the jar's preservative bite, until my kitchen felt like a lab, and I was the specimen. The calm voice said, "You'll heal. Paper doesn't. That's why the system trusts paper." My stove clock blinked and rolled forward to 2:14, as if satisfied that the required suffering had been captured. The pain in my fingers continued a bright electric pulse. I stared at the sealed parcel and understood the final cruelty I had been made to leave a physical trace of myself on it. Not just handwriting, not just a signature. A little bit of damaged skin, microscopic proof embedded in tape and powder and paper. DNA, without the romance of the word. The laptop speakers crackled, and the calm voice whispered, "Pleased, now it will always know where to return." I thought the burn would be the worst part, because pain feels final when you're in it. But the next morning taught me what this story had been building toward. All along, nothing I did was final. Not throwing boots away, not unplugging devices, not locking doors, not even damaging my own body. I woke to the smell of that sweet chemical film, still clinging to my kitchen curtains, and my fingers were wrapped in gauze I didn't remember putting on. The gauze was already stained, faintly yellow at the edges, as if I'd slept with my hand pressed against something dirty. My stove clock read 7:18 a.m. Normal time, sane time, daylight time. And for a brief moment, I believed daylight would dilute the nightmare, the way morning dilutes a bad dream. Then I heard 2 slow taps on my door. Not the frantic pounding of a neighbor, not the sharp knock of a landlord. 2 slow taps, deliberate, patient, the delivery rhythm that now lived inside my nervous system. My stomach tightened. I didn't move. The taps came again, exactly the same spacing, as if the person or the building had perfect timing. I approached the peephole and looked. The hallway was empty. No hooded figure. No bag. No box. Just the stale light of an apartment corridor. I exhaled, shakily embarrassed at myself. And that's when I noticed the doormat. Centered on it was a cardboard box, old and clean at the same time, sealed with black tape snowflake logo stamped in the corner. My breath caught. My first instinct was to leave it there and call the police in daylight. Walk down to the station, show them the footage, the contract board, the lobby cam of me in a mask. But the contract board had already proven authority hears my voice as mine, and my phone had already played my own recorded false alarm like a gag. I opened the door, stepped over the threshold, and dragged the box inside with my foot like it was a dead animal. It was lighter than the boots, heavier than it should be, and when I set it on the table, my fingers throbbed under the gauze, as if reacting to proximity. There was no shipping label, There was no stamp. There was only one thing written on the top in bold black marker: return to sender. I stared at it until my eyes burned. I hadn't written that. I hadn't mailed it. But the phrase felt like it belonged to me now, like a reflex, like the only action you can take when you're overwhelmed by unwanted mail. I peeled the tape with shaking hands. Inside was nothing dramatic, a receipt folded neatly and a printed photo. The receipt was from a local post office I'd driven past 100 times. The date was yesterday. The time was 2:13. The service listed was return to sender. The signature at the bottom was mine, clearer than the first, confident as if my hand had stopped resisting. The printed photo showed me at the post office counter, wearing a winter coat and a black ski mask, head bowed, pen in hand, signing. Behind the counter, the clerk's face was blurred by motion, but their posture was normal, casual, bored in that way people get when they process dozens of small transactions. In the background, a TV mounted near the ceiling showed a news channel. Life continuing. My stomach turned, because it meant the world had watched me mail my nightmare back with the same indifference it watches everything. The calm voice didn't need to speak. The evidence did. I stumbled back from the table and knocked over a chair. The sound was loud in my quiet apartment, and for the first time in days, I realized my own movements still made noise like a normal person's. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. I spent the entire morning trying to erase the system's hooks. I shredded the receipts. I smashed the burner phone with a hammer until plastic and metal scattered across my floor. I ripped the smoke detector out of the ceiling and pulled at wiring that wasn't there. I poured bleach down the sink and scrubbed my hands until the gauze soaked through. I threw the sealed jar bag into an outdoor dumpster 3 blocks away and walked home by a different route. By noon, my apartment smelled like chemicals on chemicals, clean layered over clean, like panic, disguised as hygiene. At 1, 2, 1, 3, my doorbell camera pinged with a motion alert. I opened the feed and saw my porch. A box sat centered on the doormat, return to sender, written on top. My throat closed. I didn't bring it in. I left it. I sat on my couch with the curtains open and watched it through the peephole every 10 minutes, like the box might grow legs. A dois presechepu. My stove clock blinked once, and the temperature in my apartment dropped slightly, just enough to make my skin tighten. At 2:13, the box disappeared from my doormat, without any visible movement. The feed didn't show a figure picking it up. It was simply there and then. It wasn't like a frame had been cut. My phone buzzed with a notification from my camera app. Delivery confirmed. I laughed, a dry sound that hurt my throat because the word delivery had become a curse. At 2:14, my front door opened by itself, an inch chain latch still intact, and a box slid across my hardwood from the hallway into my apartment like it was being pushed by an invisible hand. Return to sender. Same handwriting. Same tape. Same snowflake. The box stopped at the exact same spot by my table, the way a trained dog returns to its mat. I didn't touch it. I didn't breathe near it. I backed away into my bedroom and shut the door, and from behind the closed bedroom door, I heard the soft sound of tape being peeled, as if someone was opening it in my kitchen without me. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. No footsteps. No breath. Just the faint, mechanical click of a device starting up like a recorder. Then my own voice recorded, and calm played from somewhere outside the bedroom. Return to sender. Return to sender. Return to sender. The phrase repeated like a mantra, like my mouth had been turned into a stamp. I burst out of the bedroom, and the kitchen was empty. The box was open on the table. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed in clean black text. You can't return what you are. Under it, see you at 0, 2, 1, 3. I left my apartment that afternoon with a backpack and my keys in my gauze-wrapped hand. I checked into a cheap motel across town, under a fake name, and paid cash, because cash felt like anonymity, and anonymity felt like oxygen. I sat on the motel bed, staring at the blank wall, and tried to tell myself the loop depended on the building, on the basement, on the cameras, on the green-painted cinder block walls. Then at 212a, The motel room TV flickered on by itself, the screen filling with a dark minimalist interface and one bright word: live. The stove clock in the motel kitchenette blinked and reset to 2:12 even though I hadn't touched it. 2 slow taps sounded at the motel door. My heart hammered. The doorknob didn't rattle. The taps were polite, patient, inevitable. I crept to the peephole. The corridor outside was empty. I looked down. Centered in front of my door, on the cheap patterned carpet, was a cardboard box, sealed with black tape snowflake logo stamped in the corner. Return to Cinder. The universe had followed me like a smell. I didn't open it. I grabbed my bag and ran down the exterior stairs into the cold night air barefoot in socks, and I didn't stop until I reached a lit gas station. I stood under the fluorescent canopy, shaking, and for a second I felt safe because there were people, because the world was awake, because cameras here belonged to corporations instead of ghosts. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You can't outrun a return address. And beneath it, look up. I looked up at the gas station security monitor. The grainy feed showed the front counter, the coffee machine, the cashier, and in the corner of the frame, me under the canopy, hunched, panicked. A hooded figure stood 10 feet behind me in the feed, perfectly still, head tilted, as if it had been there the entire time. I spun around. Nobody. The monitor was lagging, I told myself. A glitch. A delay. Then the hooded figure in the monitor lifted one gloved hand slowly in that polite gesture and the feed didn't cut away. The figure stepped closer to the camera until its face filled the frame still hidden, and then it held up a sheet of paper to the lens. 2 words in thick marker. Final delivery. My stomach dropped. I stumbled backward into the cold breath, ripping, and when I turned to run, I saw a man at the edge of the gas station lot holding a package. He wasn't hooded. He wasn't dramatic. He looked like a normal delivery driver, finishing a route tired and bored. He glanced down at the label, then up at me. Hey, he called casual. This for you. He held the package out. On the label in clean print was my fake motel name, my motel room number, and the return address line read, From you. The world had accepted the fiction enough to route mail through it. My throat closed. I didn't take the package. I backed away, shaking my head. The driver shrugged, annoyed, and set it down on the curb like abandoned mail, then walked back to his truck. As he drove off, his taillights vanished into the dark, like the end of a sentence. The package sat there under fluorescent light. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Somewhere in my pocket, the skin under the gauze throbbed like a second heartbeat. My phone buzzed again with one final message, simple and cruel. Open it or it opens you. I crouched and picked up the package with my good hand. The cardboard was cold. The tape was smooth. The snowflake logo stared up like a pupil. I peeled it open right there on the curb because I understood running only widened the route. Inside was no blood, no hair, no bones. Inside was a small card, printed in clean font, like a customer service. Thank you. Thank you for your participation, it read. Role update. Cellar. Beneath that was a photo of my apartment door, from the hallway ceiling angle, centered. Doormat, centered, and in the corner, 0213. Under the photo, a line in thick marker, glossy, like it had just been written. Next buyer arrives in the morning. I stood there under the gas station lights with the card in my shaking hands, and the worst realization settled in with absolute clarity. The boxes weren't haunting me because I was special. They were haunting me because I was useful. I was the return address. I was the courier. I was the proof. And tomorrow at 2:13, someone else would wake up to 2 slow taps and an empty hallway and a box on their mat. And the only thing they would see on the label, the only thing that would make their stomach turn, would be the same words that had swallowed my life. From you.